Chapter 868. Whoosh! Tsing Hui's figure shuttled through the seabed and soon reached a depth of 60,000 meters. Finally, Qing Su sensed the abnormality of this region of the sea at an oceanic trench. This should be the place. Oh, this layer of the world barrier. However, this layer of the world barrier is already very weak. It's barely able to withstand the water pressure of 60,000 meters. Moreover, at this rate, this layer of the world barrier will collapse under the water pressure in at most 1 or 200 years, exposing this world to outsiders. Tsing Hui stood in front of this small world and did not dare to act rashly. He was afraid that he would accidentally break this extremely weak layer of the world barrier in front of him. 7-star sword spirit, please show yourself or open your world. Tsing Hui said loudly. His voice paused for a moment, and soon, a layer of ripples spread out, forming a transparent door. Tsing Hui slowly walked forward and cautiously stepped into this world. Compared to 100 years ago, the 7-star sword spirit was now even weaker. Of course, this so-called weakness was only equivalent to Tsing Hui. In fact, the energy waves emitted from its body were still not inferior to any domain realm expert. If one took into account the various methods it had mastered and this mini-world with a diameter of more than 10 kilometers, even a divine true body expert would have to suffer defeat in front of it. Oh, you, the 7-star sword spirit stared at Tsing Hui in disbelief. Are you really that little fellow who came to my mountain 100 years ago? This change is too great. 100 years is equivalent to a lifetime for mortals. Isn't it reasonable to have some changes? Tsing Hui chuckled. Then this change is too great. Moreover, the feeling you give me is somewhat different from those primal chaos realm experts, as if the 7-star sword spirit looked at Tsing Hui and seemed to be thinking hard about something. Then, it suddenly opened its eyes and stared at Tsing Hui. It can't be, the feeling you have now is like a real great golden immortal. A true zenith heaven golden immortal. Tsing Hui was intrigued. Are you talking about the origin immortal emperor of the immortal Tao civilization? No. Not an immortal emperor of the great all-embracing heaven, but a golden immortal of the great all-embracing heaven. A true golden immortal of the great all-embracing heaven who could survive for a short period of time even in the terrifying environment of chaos. A zenith heaven golden immortal who has truly jumped out of the 3 realms and is no longer within the 5 elements. Speaking of this, the 7-star sword spirit could not help but exclaim, how is this possible? There is actually someone who can cultivate to become a real golden immortal now. The great Tao of the entire world is broken. It's extremely difficult to cultivate to become an ordinary zenith heaven golden immortal, and becoming a great divine ability is completely reduced to an extravagant hope. How can anyone cultivate to become a true zenith heaven golden immortal? Tsing Hui was puzzled when he heard the 7-star sword spirit's exclamation. What? Is there a difference between real and fake almighty immortals? You don't understand. I've only heard about this from Lord Taishang. Lord Taishang once said that there are 2 kinds of golden immortals of the great all-embracing heaven. One is those who ascend to the great all-embracing heaven and gain the favor of the great all-embracing heaven. Although this kind of golden immortal is also called almighty immortal, they are only ordinary almighty immortals. Their achievements will be limited to the world for the rest of their lives. The other kind is golden immortal of the great all-embracing heaven who has completely walked their own path. This kind of golden immortal of the great all-embracing heaven is even rarer than those great divine ability. And only this kind of golden immortal can truly prove the Tao of origin and become a chaotic golden immortal, unlike Lord Taishang and the others who were bestowed by the way of heaven and became a saint. Speaking of this, the 7-star sword spirit could not help shaking his head. I'm wrong, I must be wrong. My eyes are dim and my spirituality is lax. I'm having an illusion. How can a real golden immortal of the great all-embracing heaven appear in such an environment? Tsing Hui looked at the 7-star sword spirit and waited patiently for Tsing Hui to calm down. After shouting for a while, the 7-star sword spirit gradually calmed down. Finally, his eyes fell on Tsing Hui again. After a while, he sighed. Although it's inconceivable. I really want to hope that what happened to you is true. If that's the case, then it proves that we still have hope. What hope? Xing Hui looked at the seven-star sword spirit, who had calmed down, and asked. The seven-star sword spirit shook his head and did not continue on this topic. Instead, he said, originally, I didn't intend to get involved in the affairs of the outside world, but, if you have something to say, tell me. If I can help, I'll do my best to help. Xing Hui hurriedly said, I remember telling you that I came from the source world. Now that the source world has been discovered by the cultivators of the immortal Tao civilization, they've probably brought it to the core of the immortal Tao civilization's gathering place. In that world, there are relatives and friends of mine. I can't leave them alone. Therefore, I plan to go to the source world to take a look through the world teleportation formation. However, because I cultivate the techniques of the Master of Chaos, to prevent the cultivators of the immortal Tao civilization from treating me as an enemy, I want to bring you along. On one hand, you can prove my identity. On the other hand, you're all members of the immortal Tao civilization, so it should be easier to talk to you. The Master of Chaos's lineage, the seven-star sword spirit looked at Xing Hui with a strange expression. Who told you that you're a cultivator of the Master of Chaos's lineage? You mean, you're now, the seven-star sword spirit looked at Qing Su. Just when he was about to say something, he thought of something very soon and began to organize his words. Only after quite a while did he say, if I'm not mistaken, the direction you've taken on the path of cultivation has already surpassed everyone, including the so-called Master of Chaos, Master of Time, Master of Gods, and even, our immortal Tao civilization. Can you elaborate? Your current state. We can use another way to describe it. Do you know of the Chaos Demon Gods in the immortal Tao civilization's ancient legends? Chaos Demon Gods. It's said that the great legendary Disc of Life achieved its Tao by slaying 3,000 Chaos Demon Gods. Are those the Chaos Demon Gods you speak of? That's right. The seven-star sword spirit nodded. Most of the space we know of is currently occupied by the Master of Time, the Master of Chaos, and the Master of Gods. There's an even vaster world beyond the space we know of, but there's a terrifying energy in that world. We call that energy Chaos Chi. When he said that, he stared at Qing Su. Living beings that possess their own Tao possess the right to survive in chaotic energy. These living beings are collectively known as chaotic beings. You mean, another kind of life essence? The fifth level of life above mortals, spirit beasts, holy beasts, and divine beasts? That's not a bad description. The seven-star sword spirit paused for a moment. Using the information you know, the evil gods are chaos life forms, the Lord of Time, the Lord of Chaos, and the Lord of Gods are chaos life forms, and the 3,000 chaos demon gods are chaos life forms as well. Even the great being Pan who created the world and created our world was also a chaos life form, although some chaos life forms are still in their infancy while others are at their peak. The Master of Time, the Master of Chaos, and the Master of Gods, they're all chaos beings. Xing Hui was inwardly shocked. Then, he thought of something and hurriedly asked, then what about the Master of Time, the Great Masters, and, the most powerful and mighty saint of the immortal Tao civilization, and the Tao ancestor who's incarnated into the heavenly Tao? Master of Time. Great Masters. Saints. Tao ancestor. When the seven-star sword spirit mentioned the saint's name, he clearly felt rather apprehensive. His expression was humble and respectful, nowhere near as casual as Qing Su's words. I wouldn't dare make wild guesses about the saints, but they shouldn't be chaos beings. As for the great Tao ancestor, he's actually one of the 3,000 demon gods. As for the Master of Time and the Great Masters, they're just pawns used by the Master of Chaos to nurture the 12 divine beasts. Pawns? Yes, there are 12 divine beasts under the Master of Chaos. These 12 divine beasts represent 12 great Taos, and if they can mature, they'll be like the 12 heavenly capital god fiendish formation back then, simulating the great disc's true form. Even if the feasibility of this plan isn't high, the Master of Chaos can spend billions of years to nurture these 12 traitors into chaos beings, which is what you call the 4th level chaos realm, or the level of the evil god. The Master of Chaos method of nurturing them is to have the great masters assimilate into the Tao. Xing Hui suddenly thought of his relationship with the Scarlet Abyss sword. You're saying that the great masters assimilate into the Tao to strengthen the 12 divine beasts? Or are they simply conveyors of the divine beast's power? The 7-star sword spirit nodded solemnly. Based on my many years of observation, this is most likely the truth. If you secretly ask around, some of the ancient great masters themselves know their own situation. This is also why the evil gods have always been able to survive despite being banished by the Master of Chaos, the Master of Time, and the Master of Gods. Once they become great masters, if they want to progress further in the future, they either have to receive the Master of Chaos support and become a Tao ancestor like the 12 divine beasts, or break the shackles the Master of Chaos has placed on them, in other words, proving one's Tao through strength. Tao ancestor, proving one's Tao through strength. Xing Hui quickly connected the dots in his mind. Perhaps, the 12 divine beasts in the Master of Chaos domain were the so-called saints of the immortal Tao civilization. The Master of Chaos method is akin to killing the goose that lays the golden eggs. How difficult is it to nurture the 12 divine beasts with the method of assimilating into the Tao? Moreover, this method is equivalent to burying the potential of all cultivators in our civilization, because all cultivators serve the growth of the 12 divine beasts. Even if the Master of Chaos method is to allow the 12 divine beasts to become true chaos beings and evolve to a level that is not inferior to the evil gods, so that they can observe the true form of the great master, the price is too great. The 7-star sword spirit paused for a moment. At present, our immortal Tao civilization's main strategy against the cultivators under the Lord of Chaos is to expose the Lord of Chaos's scheme. Those who have learned the truth are rather dissatisfied with this approach, and some secretly refuse to obey the Lord of Chaos's orders. Others feign compliance but secretly oppose. This is also the reason why our immortal Tao civilization has been able to survive in the cracks. Chapter 869. Qing Su nodded slightly when he heard that. Although the Lord of Chaos could radiate his power to the myriad worlds, he was clearly not a great being who was meticulous in the details. His style of doing things was crude. The immortal Tao civilization could not resist the invasion of the Lord of Chaos, the Lord of Time, and the Lord of Gods at its peak, let alone now when there were only a few small fries left. The main reason why the immortal Tao civilization could survive to this day was that the immortal Tao civilization did not have enough strength to pursue them. There is a fundamental difference between chaos beings and beings below. Beings below the chaos level are imprinted with the characteristics of their world and cannot be changed, but beings at the chaos level, as long as you want, you can imitate the cultivation style of any lineage. Immortal Tao system, divine beast system, technology system, faith system. As long as you have a suitable cultivation method, it will be easy. Easy, Xing Hui shook his head. It might be easy for others, but he cultivated the great Tao of unity. If he imitated other cultivation systems too much, it would only interfere with his own cultivation. For safety's sake, I hope that the 7-star sword spirit can come with me to the immortal Tao civilization. Xing Hui said again. The 7-star sword spirit glanced at Xing Hui, but seeing Xing Hui's solemn expression and a hint of pleading, it could not refuse directly. After hesitating for a moment, it sighed and said, "Fine, fine. I'll go with you for the sake of the hope you carry." What's wrong with that? However, I must make one thing clear to you. I might be able to give some face to the older generation of Grand Luo immortals since they have more or less heard of my name, but I can't do anything to the new Grand Luo immortals born in recent years. I understand. In fact, as long as I am not surrounded by several Grand Luo immortals, it is not a problem for me to escape with my life. Xing Hui said. Before the Scarlet Abyss Sword Spirit broke through to the Primal Chaos Realm and gave him a round of feedback, he would have a slim chance of surviving against a Grand Eternity Immortal. Now that he had the feedback of the Scarlet Abyss Sword Spirit, his combat power, he had probably reached a level where he could fight 40 to 50 Primal Chaos Realm Supremes head-on. Even though he still couldn't fight a Grand Luo Immortal head-on, a Grand Luo Immortal wouldn't be able to instantly kill him in a short period of time. As long as he could maintain this state for a period of time, it wouldn't be difficult for him to swiftly retreat based on his unique characteristics of existing and non-existing. That's true. You're someone who has the potential to become a true Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal, but now, you're too weak, so weak that you don't even have the qualifications to step into the chaos. I really don't understand how someone as weak as you can walk such a path. I'm afraid that other than me, an old fellow who once followed the saint, even those Zenith Heaven Immortals and even those with great divine abilities wouldn't be able to see through the true mystery of you. It's as if no one would imagine a man dressed like a beggar to be a prince, even if he looks almost identical to that prince. The 7-star Sword Spirit sighed. When Xing Hui heard the 7-star Sword Spirit's words, somehow, he felt that there was something wrong with this analogy. After a while, he said again, have you ever seen a true Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal? Do you know how they cultivate? A true Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal is a chaotic life form in the general sense. Since they're chaotic life forms, they naturally have to cultivate and explore the chaos void. It's like how whales can only be raised in the sea. If you're given a small pond, the whale will either be malnourished or starve to death. There's no other way. The chaos void, Xing Hui noted it down. But you absolutely can't go to the chaos void now. As far as I know, you have to be at least at the level of a Zenith Heaven Immortal to be able to absorb the chaos yuan qi. And if you want to survive in the chaos void, even if it's temporary, you have to become a great divine ability. If you rashly go to the chaos void now, only death will await you. Zenith Heaven Immortal. I understand. Xing Hui agreed, there's no time to lose. I think we should head to the Fortune mainland now and activate the transmission array there to head to the Immortal Dao civilization. You just have to lead the way. Oh right, do you have any small worlds or immortal kingdoms? You can bring me there too. My spirituality is already not strong, I can't withstand too much suffering along the way. I have a small world that was opened by a great divine ability expert. I'll have to trouble you to rest in it for a while. A small world opened by a great divine ability expert. That's fine. The 7-star Sword Spirit agreed. Xing Hui immediately took out the small world and asked at the same time, Senior 7-star, Hidden Sword Venerable should also be in this small world. Why don't I see him? Hidden Sword Venerable, that little guy. His cultivation path has already reached its end. After pleading with him, he decided to switch to the Sword Immortal Dao. He's now in seclusion at my place. With my aura concealing him, you naturally won't be able to see him. After the 7-star Sword Spirit finished speaking, he waved his hand. In the depths of the small world, he saw an old man cultivating sword qi. Who else could it be other than Hidden Sword Venerable? With the guidance of the 7-star Sword Spirit, Sword Venerable Hidden Sword's cultivation conversion was extremely efficient. The sword aura that he had painstakingly cultivated was not inferior to a strike from a divine true body expert. Considering that sword immortals were proficient in killing, Hidden Sword Venerable should be at the void-shattering realm. Should I wake him up? There's no need. Let's head to the Fortune mainland first. As Qing Su spoke, he gave the 7-star Sword Spirit a reminder before putting him and the small world into the Fortune mainland. Without further delay, the 7-star Sword Spirit flew at full speed towards the Fortune mainland. During this period of time, the Fortune mainland had also suffered a lot of damage. Fortunately, the Fortune mainland was too remote, and the cultivators who came to the Fortune mainland were after the Dao treasure. They wouldn't deliberately destroy any buildings. Even though the power structure on the Fortune mainland had been reshuffled, the situation had quickly stabilized in the past 2 years. Currently, the Fortune mainland was still under Rockhart's control. When Xing Hui arrived at the Fortune mainland, he directly called for Rockhart, who was already in the Golden Core realm, and gave her a lot of resources. Over the years, he had killed more than a dozen Chaos Realm Supremes. Every time, he would rush into the small worlds of these Supremes and wreak havoc. From time to time, when he had the time, he would naturally plunder some precious resources from the small worlds. If these resources were leaked out, it would be enough to make countless first-thought World Ascension Realm experts bleed. Although a portion of it had been given to Venerable Zhu Zhao, Venerable Firmament, and the others, the leftover materials were enough to allow Rockheart's cultivation to advance by leaps and bounds. At the same time, it allowed her to stay on the Fortune mainland and take care of the transmission array for him. She would be able to activate the transmission array again 10 years later. Xing Hui had carefully considered the 10 years. He had been away from the divine wilderness great world for too long. If the Void Sword Pavilion couldn't detect his presence, they might cause some trouble. If he turned around and returned after a year like last time, he might not be able to smoothly resolve the matter on Earth. Therefore, 10 years was the most suitable number. After explaining clearly, Xing Hui didn't waste any more time. He stood at the center of the transmission array and quickly released the void crystals. After doing this, he didn't activate the transmission array immediately. Instead, he took out the World Rainbow Bridge. I wonder if the World Rainbow Bridge can lock onto the coordinates of the two worlds through this transmission array. If it can lock onto the coordinates, it might be able to open a fixed passage between the Divine Wilderness Great World and Earth. At that time, it would be much easier for people on Earth to travel to and from the Divine Wilderness Great World. As he thought about this, Xing Hui activated the information-gathering function of the World Rainbow Bridge. Then, he sent a surge of space force into the transmission array. With the influx of space force, the energy within the void crystals was rapidly absorbed by the transmission array. A wave of space force suddenly spread out from the transmission array. When the spatial ripples spread out, Qing Su also focused his attention on the world bridge. He wanted to see something, but very soon, he stowed the world bridge away regretfully. The ripples are too weak. The person who created this teleportation formation has to be in existence at the level of great ability at the very least. Otherwise, it's impossible for them to create such a profound formation. Who knows how many trillion light-years away in a single breath, but the energy ripples it gives off aren't even 1/100th of a teleportation formation of a regular world. This was the highest manifestation of technology. It was like using a nuclear bomb to blow up a building. As the World Transmission Array operated, the surrounding environment rapidly changed. Red and blue streams of light constantly flew around him. After an unknown amount of time, the rapidly fading streams of light finally calmed down. As the space force dissipated, Xing Hui appeared in a huge man-made plaza. As Xing Hui's figure appeared, streams of light rapidly whizzed over from all directions. At this moment, there were already 30 or 40 powerful auras in front of Xing Hui. Clearly, these people had sensed the space force fluctuations of the World Transmission Array and immediately rushed over to check out the situation. Xing Hui's gaze swept across these people. Among the dozens of cultivators from the immortal Tao civilization, there were 3 Grand Unity Immortals who were equivalent to Primal Chaos Supremes. The remaining dozens of people were true immortals who were equivalent to world creation with a thought, and 10 or so false immortals who were equivalent to traversal realm cultivators. This power was still within Xing Hui's scope of understanding. However, before he could take a good look at these cultivators from the immortal Tao civilization, a vast and terrifying aura mixed with a dozen or so energy waves that were not inferior to Primal Chaos Supremes flew in his direction at an extremely fast speed. Before the person arrived, the earth-shattering aura had already descended, causing Xing Hui's expression to freeze slightly. A Zenith Heaven Immortal. Only a Zenith Heaven Immortal could cause him to feel apprehensive and fearful of an aura. Considering his goal of returning to Earth, Xing Hui forcibly suppressed the thought of turning around and leaving in his heart. He patiently stared in the direction of the dozen or so auras that were rapidly approaching and waited quietly. Chapter 870. Earth was only about 10,000 kilometers in diameter. Even though Earth had been moved to a special space similar to a small world, it did not take long for a Zenith Heaven Immortal to reach it. From the moment Xing Hui sensed the Zenith Heaven Immortal's aura to the moment the Zenith Heaven Immortal arrived in front of Xing Hui, the entire process took less than 3 breaths. Just as Xing Hui finished surveying his surroundings, the Zenith Heaven Immortal led a dozen Grand Unity Immortals who were equivalent to Primal Chaos Supremes to the scene. Immortal Emperor Tsang Hai. One of the Grand Unity Immortals who had been secretly guarding Xing Hui stepped forward and bowed. At the same time, he glanced warily at Xing Hui. This is the cultivator who suddenly appeared from the teleportation formation. However, he did not do anything after appearing. He doesn't seem to have any ill intentions. Oh. The leader of the group, Immortal Emperor Tsang Hai, nodded. He looked at Qing Su. Who are you? You must be the leader of this gathering place, right? I'm not your enemy. Strictly speaking, I'm also from this world. However, by chance, I went to another world. If the leaders, marshals, and generals of this world from 100 years ago are still here, they should be able to recognize me. You're from the Source World. Immortal Emperor Tsang Hai looked at Xing Hui differently. At this moment, one of the men who came with Immortal Emperor Tsang Hai suddenly stepped forward and whispered, Immortal Emperor Tsang Hai, this person. When I brought him here, I did hear the native cultivators of the Source World mention him. He should be called Xing Hui. It was him who led the beings of the Source World and developed them into a level 10 civilization. However, why he was able to lead the entire civilization to the path of cultivation is still unknown. Immortal Emperor Tsang Hai, you were the one who arranged for the transfer of the cultivators of the Source World. Go find someone to verify this. Immortal Emperor Tsang Hai said. Yes, Immortal Emperor. I'll send a message now. How are the people of the Source World? You didn't hurt them, did you? When Xing Hui heard about the whereabouts of the people from Source World, he immediately went forward to inquire. Stop. Stay where you are. Don't move. An immortal monarch stepped forward and shouted, You'd better not do anything that would cause us to misunderstand. Otherwise, don't blame us for being merciless. I've already said that I'm not your enemy. I've also brought along someone you're familiar with. He should be able to prove that I have no ill intentions towards your civilization. After saying that, Qing Su waved his hand. It was such a simple action, but it caused the nearby Grand Unity Immortals to react as though they were facing a great enemy. Some of them even stimulated their own immortal energy, linking it together to form a huge ceiling formation that was about to suppress Xing Hui in one fell swoop. Fortunately, Immortal Emperor Tsang Hai seemed to see that Xing Hui only wanted to summon one person. Before these Tai Immortals could attack, he waved his hand and stopped them. Wait a moment. As he spoke, his gaze had already landed on the 7 stars sword spirit that Xing Hui had transferred out of the small world. Senior 7 stars, thank you for your trouble. Xing Hui said. He did not seem to care about the ceiling formation formed by several Grand Unity Immortals at all. The 7 stars sword spirit looked around and sensed the changes in the aura. There's indeed a sense of familiarity with the Earth Immortal realm, but the Great Tao has long been damaged. Even if I imitated the environment of the Earth Immortal realm and set up this Grotto Heaven world. This is actually reconstructed from the world fragments of the soaring Jade Dragon of the 36 Heavens? Immortal Emperor Tsang Hai saw that the 7 stars sword spirit had called out the name of the soaring Jade Dragon of the soaring Jade Dragon and sensed a noble and graceful immortal Tao aura from it. He immediately asked cautiously, May I know who you are, me? I'm just a small sword spirit. As for my real name, Immortal Tao cultivators from 100,000 years ago should have heard of it. I'm the 7 stars demon refining sword. 7 stars demon refining sword. Immortal Emperor Tsang Hai was slightly taken aback. The expressions of the other immortal monarchs also changed when they heard this name. 7 stars demon refining sword. Could it be the Grand Supreme Saint? Immortal Emperor Tsang Hai's attitude immediately changed, and his tone became slightly more cautious. I did cultivate with the Grand Supreme Master back then. The 7 stars sword spirit said lightly. So it's Senior 7 Stars who has graced us with your presence. Immortal Emperor Shanghai bowed slightly in a rather formal manner. At the same time, he sent out a message, apparently seeking confirmation from the cultivators of the immortal Tao civilization who had survived 100,000 years ago. Originally, I had already reached the point where my spirituality was dissipating, and it wouldn't be long before I naturally fell into an eternal slumber and returned to nothingness. However, I was still dragged here by this young man, Xing Hui. It can be considered as selling my old face on behalf of him and proving his identity. Indeed, you shouldn't be enemies. On the contrary, I think you should be friends. Of course, with Senior Xing Hui as a guarantor, we naturally trust His Excellency Xing Hui. Immortal Emperor Shanghai waved his hand, and the Grand Unity Immortals who had faintly formed a formation around Xing Hui quickly retreated to express their attitude. Apologies for offending you earlier. It's fine. I anticipated that there might be a misunderstanding between us, so I specially invited Senior 7 Stars out. I wonder if you can take me to see Earth now. In other words, the people of the Source World. Among those people are my relatives and friends, and I really want to know how they're doing now. Xing Hui inquired. Of course, of course. Don't worry, Sir Qing Su. We've made appropriate arrangements for the people of the origin world. Those with talent have directly joined the various sects and clans, while those with less talent have been able to live a peaceful and happy life. Who knows how many times better they'll be treated than the mortals under our jurisdiction. I'll make the arrangements right now and have someone take you there personally. Immortal Emperor Shanghai instructed the Grand Unity Immortals and true immortals around him. At this moment, a figure with a tremendous aura swiftly broke through the air, attracting the attention of many people. When this aura descended, it quickly transformed into a middle-aged man. Judging from his aura, he was actually a Zenith Heaven Immortal expert. Evidently, the place Xing Hui was most likely the core area of the immortal Tao civilization, which was why so many Zenith Heaven Immortals were personally overseeing it. After the middle-aged Zenith Heaven Immortal landed, his gaze immediately fell on the 7 Stars Sword Spirit. After confirming his identity, he hurriedly stepped forward and cried out in pleasant surprise, 7 Stars, 7 Stars, it's really you. I was still in disbelief when I heard Immortal Emperor Shanghai's message. I didn't expect you to still be alive, old fellow. You're, the purple gold red gourd. Old fellow, you're actually still alive. Ha ha ha, old fellow, you're still alive, so how can I be the first to leave? The middle-aged man was overjoyed when he saw that the 7 Stars Sword Spirit recognized him. I've already transformed, and I'm called the Purple Gold Immortal Emperor. Then, he stared at the 7 Stars Sword Spirit and asked, Old fellow, how did you end up like this? Although I've ended up like this, I'm still much better than the others. The 8 trigrams cauldron is broken, the golden veil rope is broken, and the diamond chakram is destroyed. The two of us are already lucky to be able to survive. Yes. It's fortunate to be able to survive. The Purple Gold Immortal Emperor sighed emotionally. The middle-aged man who called himself the Purple Gold Celestial Emperor sighed emotionally. He seemed to have thought of the destructive battle back then. His expression was filled with respect and admiration. Immortal Emperor Shanghai, the Void Transformation Immortal Duke, and the others listened to the two of them reminiscing, but they did not dare to disturb them. Although Immortal Emperor Shanghai was an immortal emperor, he was obviously a newly promoted immortal emperor in recent years. Before that destructive battle, he was at most a Tai immortal, or even a genuine immortal. Compared to the sword spirit of 7 stars who followed the Grand Supreme Saint, his background was much worse. Even though the sword spirit of 7 stars was obviously at the end of its tether and was about to dissipate, he still dared not underestimate him and had to treat him as a junior. Alright, if you want me to vouch for you, I've already vouched for you. You can go and busy yourself with your matters. I reckon that you can't wait to see the two of us reminiscing about the old days. The 7 stars sword spirit and the purple gold immortal emperor chatted for a while before they noticed that Xing Hui looked a little uneasy. Immortal Emperor Songhai turned to the Void Transformation Immortal Duke and said, Void Transformation, you're in charge of the people in the Source World. You'll bring this Sir there. You must try your best to satisfy Sir Tsing Hui's request, understand? Don't worry, Immortal Emperor. I know. The Void Transformation Immortal Duke responded and gestured to Tsing Hui with his hand. Sir Tsing Hui, please follow us. Thank you, Immortal Duke. Tsing Hui greeted the 7 Stars Sword Spirit at the same time. Soon, he followed the Void Transformation Immortal Duke to the world of Earth, where the living beings of the Source World were settled. This person is... This person gives me a strange feeling. The Purple Gold Immortal Emperor had lived for countless years. His experience was clearly not something the newly promoted Immortal Emperor Songhai could compare to. He sized up Tsing Hui for a moment and quickly felt that something was amiss. It's more than strange. The 7 Stars Sword Spirit looked at Tsing Hui's departing figure and sighed. After a while, he asked again, who's the one in charge here? It's the disciple of the Prime Clear Saint, the Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasures. The Purple Gold Immortal Emperor said in a deep voice. Just the Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasures alone. The 7 Stars Sword Spirit was in disbelief. The only one who can be called a great divine ability is the Heavenly Lord. The 7 Stars Sword Spirit was speechless for a long time. Although he had guessed that the immortal Tao civilization would suffer heavy losses, he had not expected it to be to such an extent. The great divine ability of the entire immortal Tao civilization, there was only one person left. However, apart from the Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasures, it seems that someone has intermittently detected the traces of an important figure. Who is it? A certain quasi-saint or a true saint? The 7 Stars Sword Spirit hurriedly asked. The Purple Gold Celestial Emperor shook his head. We don't know. We only sensed his traces, but we didn't find his true body. He has never contacted us before. However, based on the traces he left behind, he might be the Qingping Sword Spirit. The Qingping Sword Spirit? Yes, with the characteristics of the Qingping Sword Spirit, he'll definitely be one of the Heavenly Lords and Quasi-Saints who have the highest chance of surviving. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to contact him until now. He seems to be blocked by some kind of power and can't contact us. Can't contact him, the 7 Stars Sword Spirit felt a little regretful. However, even if they could contact the Qingping Sword Spirit, it would not be of much use. After all, their enemies were too strong. Back then, they had relied on the power of the primitive world to defeat those terrifying opponents, let alone now that even the heavenly Tao had been shattered. The 7 Stars Sword Spirit's expression dimmed for a moment. Then, he glanced at the vast sea Immortal Emperor and seemed to have thought of something. He suddenly asked, the Jade Dragon Soaring Victory is in your hands. If I'm not wrong, the Exalted Heaven should also be in your hands, right? That's right, the Exalted Heaven is indeed in our hands. However, the Exalted Heaven has long been damaged, and the power it can transform is less than 1/10,000th of its peak. It's still here. That's the greatest blessing. There was faint joy on the 7 Star Sword Spirit's face. In the end, he glanced at Qing Su who had vanished with the Immortal Lord of Void forming and said sternly, I want to see the Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasures. There's something I want to discuss with the Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasures. This matter might be related to the hope and opportunity of our civilization's revival. It's related to the hope and opportunity of our immortal Tao civilization's revival. The Purple Gold Immortal Emperor's expression turned serious as well. Based on his understanding of the 7 Stars Sword Spirit, he knew the 7 Stars Sword Spirit would not joke about such an important matter. He said without hesitation, I'll arrange it for you right away. Chapter 871. This is the territory where the people of the Source World currently live. The Void Immortal Monarch flew with Tsing Hui for a while before finally stopping at a land with mountains, rivers, and grasslands that was very similar to Earth's. In terms of area, the jade dragon soaring heaven was bigger than the divine wilderness Great World, the true sun Great World, and the Taihua Great World. However, as the jade dragon soaring heaven had been mostly destroyed, it was equivalent to a remnant. In terms of total area, it was only 100 million kilometers in diameter, which was smaller than the divine wilderness Great World, not to mention the true sun Great World, the Taihua Great World, and the jade capital Great World. Of course, this was only the surface area of the jade dragon soaring heaven. In fact, the headquarters of the immortal Tao civilization was formed by the unification of a large number of worlds. These worlds had remnants of the 36 heavens, but most of them were grotto heaven worlds. Although these grotto heaven worlds were only 1 to 1 million kilometers in size, there were many of them. Therefore, in terms of level of development, the headquarters of the immortal Tao civilization was not inferior to a powerful level 21 civilization. Earth was not divided into level 10 worlds, but because they were from the source world, they were still treated specially. The population of Earth, which was still less than 10 billion even after 100 years of development, occupied a total of 10 billion square kilometers, which was 20 times the area of Earth. 10 times the area, evenly distributed, and with reasonable utilization, all living beings on Earth, which currently had a total population of about 6 billion, had enough space. Other than those clans that spontaneously gathered together, most people had their own private courtyards, manors, or cave abodes. In addition, as the people of Earth were included in the immortal Tao civilization, and with the support of the immortal Tao civilization, Earth had completed the transformation from a technological civilization to an immortal Tao civilization in a short 100 years. Currently, the instruments that shuttled through the living space of Earth were no longer spaceships or vehicles, but flying swords and various flying artifacts. Xing Hui stood outside this territory and looked up. He could clearly feel the huge transformation of Earth's civilization. With the personal support of true immortals who could create worlds with a single thought and tiny immortals who were at the peak of the primal chaos realm, the civilization of Earth had risen from level 10 to level 15 in just 100 years. In other words, in terms of cultivation level, the present Earth was not inferior to the divine wilderness Great World before the Qing Su transmigrated. No, it was even higher than the divine wilderness Great World. After all, before Xing Hui had arrived at the divine wilderness Great World, there were only 3 supreme experts at the profound void realm. But now, among the 6 billion people on Earth, there were 4 at the shattering void realm, dozens at the profound void realm, and hundreds at the grand domain realm. Practitioners at the golden core realm accounted for 1% of the total population, which amounted to 20 million. Moreover, the immortal Tao civilization was proficient in extending one's lifespan, so the lifespan of golden core realm practitioners was much longer than that of the master of chaos lineage. At 9,000 years old, they were only a step away from 10,000 years of lifespan. With all kinds of benefits, the people of Earth's civilization did not reject the idea of joining the immortal Tao civilization. Instead, they felt proud to be part of the immortal Tao civilization. Hundreds of millions of people walked out of the settlements that the immortal Tao civilization had arranged for them and joined sects that were willing to accept them, completely becoming a part of the immortal Tao civilization. Don't worry, immortal Xing Hui. After all, these people came from the source world. When the Lord of Heaven learned of this, he personally ordered immortal Emperor Canghai to settle them down. In the end, immortal Emperor Canghai handed this task to me. I didn't disappoint immortal Emperor Canghai and the Lord of Heaven's expectations. These years, I've done my best to help your people. In 100 years, they've made significant progress and entered the level 15 civilization level. Immortal Emperor Canghai smiled. Xing Hui could not help but feel a little helpless when he heard this. According to immortal Emperor Canghai, he had single-handedly led Earth's civilization from level 10 to level 15. Xing Hui should be thanking him, but he, who truly understood the immortal Tao civilization's current situation, did not want Earth's civilization to have too much to do with the immortal Tao civilization. After all, the immortal Tao civilization was the target of attacks from 3 great existences, the Lord of Chaos, the Lord of Time, and the Lord of Gods. Currently, the cultivators of the immortal Tao civilization were constantly sowing discord, causing the experts under the great existences to turn a blind eye to their existence. However, once the experts under the great existences began to capture the immortal Tao civilization with all their might, how long could the immortal Tao civilization last? However, he naturally could not say these words in front of immortal Emperor Tsunghai and the others. Many thanks, immortal Emperor Tsunghai. I was delayed for 100 years because of some matters. If it weren't for you bringing them here in time and transforming Earth's civilization into a cultivation civilization, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to see many of my family and friends again. Sword Sovereign Xing Hui, you're too kind. Since I've brought the people of the Source World to our immortal Tao civilization, I naturally have to take responsibility for their survival. Xing Hui nodded. When Xing Hui and immortal Emperor Tsunghai appeared in this territory, the experts of the immortal Tao civilization who specialized in teaching Earth's civilization sensed their presence. Soon, 3 men equivalent to the unrivaled realm hurried over and bowed respectfully. Greetings, immortal Emperor Tsunghai. Oh, are the 3 of you on duty today? Are the people of the Source World all right? No. The people of the Source World are extremely enthusiastic and curious about our immortal Tao civilization. Currently, most of them are wholeheartedly focused on cultivating in seclusion. In addition, with the resources you've provided, they don't have to worry about resources, much less incite unnecessary hatred and killing. The one with the highest cultivation among the 3 responded respectfully. He then added, however, due to the overly comfortable environment, many people's mental cultivation can no longer keep up. If this problem isn't resolved as soon as possible, it'll be difficult for their civilization level to rise again. Then activate the Demon Refinement Illusory Realm and let them experience reincarnation again and again in the illusory realm. They'll continuously defeat their inner demons and evil thoughts and refine their souls. Immortal Emperor Tsunghai said. Demon Refinement Illusory Realm? The cost of activating the Demon Refinement Illusory Realm is not small. Every year, even if it's only 10,000 people, the amount of resources spent is enough to nurture an earthly immortal. It's alright, activate it. After the Void Celestial Duke finished speaking, he turned to Xing Hui and said, This is Xing Hui Celestial Duke. He's an honored guest of the Vast Sea Celestial Emperor and the Purple Gold Celestial Emperor. He should have some questions for all of you, so please don't neglect him. The Vast Sea Celestial Emperor and the Purple Gold Celestial Emperor's reputations were clearly terrifying. The 3 Void Celestials, who were equivalent to reigning realm Celestials, quickly bowed and said, Greetings, Celestial Duke. If there's anything you need, please let us know. I have something to ask the 3 of you. I'm originally from the Source World, but by chance, I went to the outside world to train. When I returned, the people from the Source World had already been transferred here. I'd like to ask all of you to help me look for someone. Look for someone? The Void Celestials were slightly taken aback. With the strength of a Grand Unity Celestial Duke's divine thought, could he not just scan the area to look for someone? Was there a need for them to appear? The Void Celestial Duke at the side knew Xing Hui's background, so he immediately said, I can help you with this. Who are you looking for, Celestial Duke Xing Hui? My biological father. Thank you. As Xing Hui spoke, he sent Qing Yuming's image to the Void Celestial Duke with his consciousness. After receiving Xing Hui's message, the Void Celestial Duke quickly spread out his divine thought. Like the spring wind and rain, it silently permeated the mountains and rivers within a radius of 100,000 kilometers. Soon, he found the information Xing Hui had given him and sent the location back to Xing Hui with his divine thought. I found him. He's here. Celestial Duke Xing Hui, shall we go over now? Thank you, Void Celestial Duke. We'll go over now. Xing Hui was pleasantly surprised. At the same time, he was envious of the Void Celestial Duke's meticulous use of divine thought. In terms of the strength of his spiritual power, it was definitely not inferior to the Void Celestial Duke's. With a burst of his spiritual power, it would not be difficult for him to raise an area of 100,000 kilometers to the ground. However, to control his divine thought so precisely like the Void Celestial Duke and determine if they were the target he was looking for, this ability was far beyond his imagination. However, 100,000 kilometers was not the limit of a primal chaos realm's supreme spiritual power range. If he only wanted to find one or two targets, he did not need to accurately determine the location of ants. It should not be difficult, right? With the foundation of the primal chaos realm, could he learn the Void Celestial Duke's method of using divine thought and use it to find Jiang Ningxi? At the thought of this, Xing Hui did not care about being presumptuous and hurriedly asked, I wonder if the Void Celestial Duke can teach me this divine thought-searching method? Oh. Of course, but... The Void Celestial Duke clearly understood that Xing Hui was from the Master of Chaos's faction, so he said tactfully, this divine thought-searching method is built on the foundation of divine thought and divine sense cultivation. Before using this method, you need to first refine your spirit into divine thought, and then refine your divine thought into divine sense. Only then will you be able to instantly refine your spirit into divine thought and then refine your divine thought into divine sense. Only then will you be able to instantly determine the aura of everyone within a radius of 100,000 kilometers. If Immortal Lord Xing Hui wants to cultivate. I'm afraid it'll take some time, if Immortal Lord Xing Hui needs any help, I'm very willing to help. Xing Hui pondered for a moment, but in the end, he gave up on this idea. According to the Void Celestial Duke, refining one's spirit into divine thought and then transforming it into divine sense was obviously not an easy task. He immediately said, I would like to ask Immortal Lord to help me find another person. This is a small matter. The Void Celestial Duke smiled. Xing Hui immediately sent Jiang Ningxi's image to the Void Celestial Duke. The Void Celestial Duke once again spread out his divine thought to search within a radius of 100,000 kilometers. However, a moment later, he frowned and turned to Xing Hui. He said regretfully, Immortal Lord Xing Hui, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. I didn't find the person you're looking for, you didn't find her. Xing Hui held his breath when he heard this. Even though he did not find Jiang Ningxi the last time he came to Earth, he was more or less prepared. However, when he heard the Void Celestial Duke say it personally, he still felt as if a huge rock was pressing down on his heart. It was so heavy that he almost could not breathe. Senior Sister Jiang, was she really dead? Chapter 872. Seeing this, the void-forming immortal monarch understood that the person Qing Su was looking for was extremely important. If such a person really existed and was located in the origin world, then they would have nothing to worry about if they could completely pull this chess piece that had infiltrated the territory of the Master of Chaos into their side. He thought for a moment and said, Xing Hui Immortal Monarch, it's very difficult to find someone based on their appearance. Do you remember her aura ripples? It would be best if she had spiritual ripples. After all, many people's appearances can change in a myriad of ways. Even aura ripples and spiritual ripples can be disguised and altered. However, the average cultivation level of the people in the source world is still quite far from being able to alter spiritual ripples. There are only a few who can change their aura, so if you can provide us with her aura and spiritual ripples, we might be able to find her more accurately. Aura, spiritual ripples. When Xing Hui and Jiang Ningxi had parted ways, he had only been immortal. How could he possibly capture her aura and spiritual ripples? If her aura and spiritual ripples don't exist, then... I'm sorry. The void-transforming immortal monarch said helplessly. I can only tell them to keep an eye out for any information related to this fairy. If they happen to run into her, I'll have someone inform you. Thank you. Xing Hui said. He knew that the void-transforming immortal monarch was only doing his best and leaving the rest to fate. It's our fault for not being able to help you, Xing Hui Immortal Monarch. The void-transforming immortal monarch transmitted Jiang Ningxi's image to the three void-transforming immortals. Bai Fang, Yi Yuan, Ning Shuang, keep an eye out for this woman. If there's any news, I'll allow you to report to me directly. The three void-transforming immortals hurriedly lowered their heads respectfully. Understood, we'll use all our strength to find this fairy. In the cultivation system of the Master of Primal Chaos, void-transforming immortals were only on par with reigning immortals. How could reigning immortals compare to Primal Chaos immortals? Many unhindered realm experts might not even have the chance to speak to a Primal Chaos supremacy in their entire lives. Even though there was no such thing as a hollow immortal not being qualified to talk to a grand unity immortal in the immortal civilization, it was still not easy for a hollow immortal to catch the eye of a grand unity immortal lord. Now that the Void Transformation Immortal Lord had specifically given the mission to the three of them, they immediately remembered it in their hearts. It seemed like they would spend the next few hundred years searching for Jiang Ningji. When the Void Transformation Immortal Duke gave the three pseudo-immortals their missions, they arrived at a quaint courtyard. The courtyard was about 6,000 square meters, which was not small. There was also a 13-level array outside. Even though the most powerful experts in Earth's civilization had reached the level of shattering vacuum, most people's average level was still limited to Saint Realm. Golden Core Realm experts could be considered elites in society. Under such circumstances, Qing Yuming's family could set up a 13-level array, which showed how extraordinary they were. As Tsing Hui's group arrived, some of the local cultivators in the courtyard who seemed to be attached to Qing Yuming's family immediately sensed something and quickly came forward. When they saw the markings on the three pseudo-immortals, they were shocked. A few of them immediately came forward to greet the pseudo-immortals, while another ran into the courtyard to report to the owner, Qing Yuming. Soon, as the head of the family, Qing Yuming and his wife, Hai Tang, had left the courtyard. After leaving the courtyard, Qing Yuming immediately saw Tsing Hui standing in the void with the three pseudo-immortals. He could not help but be pleasantly surprised. However, in front of the Bai Fang, Yi Yuan, Ning Shuang, and the others, he took the initiative to bow to them first. Greetings, immortal envoys. I didn't know that you'd come, so I didn't welcome you. Please forgive me. The Bai Fang, Yi Yuan, and Ning Shuang had already learned from the Void Transformation Immortal Duke that the man in front of them, who was equivalent to a level 11 Divine Power Realm expert, was the father of Immortal Duke Tsing Hui, who was on the same level as the Void Transformation Immortal Duke. Naturally, they did not dare to accept his bow and quickly stepped aside. We came here mainly to accompany Immortal Duke Tsing Hui. We can't accept your bow, fellow Taoist Yuming. Immortal Duke Tsing Hui. Qing Yuming and Madame Hai Tang, who came out of the courtyard, could not help but widen their eyes at the same time when they heard how the Bai Fang addressed Tsing Hui. Having stepped into the immortal Tao civilization, they knew very well what an immortal duke meant to them. In the immortal Tao civilization, cultivators were divided into four major stages: Qi refinement, soul formation, void return, and immortal ascension. The 9th level of Qi refinement corresponded to the mortal realm and the immortal realm, the 6th level of soul formation corresponded to the saint realm, the 1st to 3rd levels of the divine realm corresponded to the 3 levels of void return, and the divine true body was classified as the immortal ascension stage. Those who cultivated the divine true body were called immortal bodies by the immortal Tao civilization's cultivators. They were called earth immortals or half-immortals. Above that were pseudo-immortals. Those who had a celestial kingdom were true immortals. Above that were the Grand Unity Immortal Duke, who had a profound great Tao, and the immortal and indestructible Origin Immortal Emperor. Currently, the entire Earth's cultivators' civilization was improving under the guidance of several pseudo-immortal envoys and many Earth immortal envoys. However, the most powerful cultivators were only level 3 void return. To them, Grand Unity Immortal Duke was a supreme existence. Tsing Hui, you're a Grand Unity Immortal Duke? This is... Qing Yuming's eyes were filled with disbelief. Madame Hai Tang also lowered her head. She seemed to be unable to open her eyes because of the dazzling halo above Tsing Hui's head. It's just a coincidence, Tsing Hui said with a smile. Seeing that his family was fine and living well, his mood naturally became cheerful. Meanwhile, the pseudo-immortal Duke said very consciously, "We won't disturb Tsing Hui Immortal Duke and his son any longer. We'll take our leave first. Also, We've been ordered by Immortal Emperor Tsang Hai to open up an immortal residence on Liupa Island 80,000 kilometers away. We'll give the 3,000 kilometers of Liupa Island to Immortal Duke Tsinghui. In 3 to 5 days, Immortal Duke Tsinghui and his family can move to Liupa Island. Thank you, Pseudo-Immortal Duke. It's my duty. This is my communication jade talisman. If there's anything, Immortal Duke Tsinghui can contact me directly. The Pseudo-Immortal Duke handed over his communication jade talisman to Tsinghui. Then, he politely said something and left with the Bai Fang and the other two. The few of them might not feel much when they were Tsinghui, but to Qing Yuming and the others, it naturally brought them great pressure at all times. That person seems to be the legendary Pseudo-Immortal Duke, right? Qing Yuming looked at the Pseudo-Immortal Duke who left with Yi Yuan, Bai Fang, and Ning Shuang with a trace of disbelief in his eyes. It's true. That's really the Pseudo-Immortal Duke. He's the savior who led our Earth's civilization out of the nightmare and ushered in a new era, the Pseudo-Immortal Duke. Madame Haitang looked at the departing figure of the Pseudo-Immortal Duke in disbelief. However, thinking back to how the Pseudo-Immortal Duke addressed Tsinghui, she felt that she could understand it. Tsinghui, but he was an immortal duke. What was wrong with an immortal duke being friends with a Pseudo-Immortal Duke? Even if that immortal duke was like a living true god to all the living beings of the Earth's civilization, he was a great life that replaced God and Allah. Madame Haitang lowered her head when she thought of Tsinghui's identity as an immortal duke. Fortunately, it was fortunate that she and Qing Yuming had always been in love with each other over the years, and their family relationship was rather harmonious as well. She did not take advantage of her daughter's rise to power and use her family background to intimidate others like she did on Earth back then after when Xian Shuxian took her in as a disciple. Otherwise, with Qing Su's return today, she would have embarrassed the entire Hai family like she did back then. Tsinghui. What's going on? Why? Why did the great Pseudo-Immortal Duke call you an immortal duke? Qing Yuming could not help but ask. It's what you understand. Tsinghui said. But after we joined the immortal Tao civilization and received the teachings of the great figures and immortals, we deduced that you should only be a cultivator at the peak of the soul transformation stage, at most, the void return stage. The void return stage. It's not just a little bit to become a grand unity immortal duke, right? It's not easy to explain. I can only say that it's a personal opportunity. You can just think of it as me receiving the inheritance of an ancient golden immortal. Tsinghui said. Then, he asked again, nothing bad happened in the past 100 years, right? No. Qing Yuming shook his head. How could anything happen? Although these immortal envoys confiscated the planet we were on, and it's said that they're using it for research, they've taken care of us very well. Not only have they provided us with a good living environment and endless resources, but they've also sent a large number of immortal envoys to guide us in our cultivation. Currently, everyone in the entire Earth's civilization has benefited from these benefits, especially the members of our Huaxia nation. They're even more impressive. The 3 third-tier void return mighty figures are all from our Huaxia. Toward the end, Qing Yuming, who had been a public official, could not help but raise his voice as a sense of national pride welled up in him. The people of the immortal Tao civilization didn't do anything bad to the Earth's civilization, right? Of course not, Qing Yuming shook his head. After a moment, he added, of course, when we first joined the big family of the immortal Tao civilization, many politicians wanted to stir up trouble. However, the immortal envoys of the immortal Tao civilization all mastered incredible immortal techniques and crushed their little schemes as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. They even ruthlessly killed a group of people. However, I applauded and cheered for this matter. All in all, the benefits of our people joining the immortal Tao civilization clearly outweigh the disadvantages. Tsinghui nodded. Since the immortal Tao civilization did not make things difficult for the people of the Earth's civilization, Tsinghui felt much more at ease. However, he immediately thought of the Earth that the immortal Tao civilization's immortal lords and immortal emperors had taken away for research. Or rather, Source world. Could these people have deduced that the creation divine jade was with him from the divine tree boundary in the source world? There was no doubt that the creation divine jade was of great value to the immortal Tao civilization. If the immortal Tao civilization's people tried to take it away from him, how should he deal with this? For a moment, while reuniting with his family, he began to consider the possible escape routes he might need to prepare. Chapter 873. Xing Hui reunited with his family and spent a lot of time and energy nursing Qing Yuming's body so that he could advance to the 12th level as soon as possible, which was equivalent to the divine true body stage. Meanwhile, an airship was riding the wind and breaking the waves toward the manor millions of kilometers away from the source world's territory. The airship was not big and could only carry 20 to 30 passengers. There were only 6 passengers on the airship at the moment. Among the 6 passengers, there were 3 men and 3 women, and they were evenly distributed. The 3 men all had extraordinary appearances and elegant demeanors. As for the 3 women, they were either gentle and charming, or valiant and formidable. They could be called a golden couple, a celestial beauty. Wei, is your hometown in front of us? I heard that you all came from the source world. We're very curious about the mysterious and legendary source world. The leader of the group led the group. Among the 6 people, the man in the lead looked at the woman beside him who was wearing a sky blue dress. Even though it wasn't an ancient costume, it was still filled with a beautiful and elegant aura. If Qing Yuming, Hai Tang, and the others were here, they would be able to recognize at first glance that this woman was their precious daughter, Hai Wire. Their other daughter, Qing Yusin, was with Hai Wire. Compared to when they had left home, both Hai Wire and Qing Yusin had undergone tremendous changes, be it in terms of temperament or appearance. In particular, their cultivations had surpassed their parents in all aspects, reaching the void transformation stage and the domain stage. The man who was talking to them was a void-shattering stage man. He was also the one with the highest cultivation among them. Fairy Wen Xian's sect could be called a large force locally, but it was just an ordinary sect in the entire immortal Tao civilization. Although there were true immortals in the sect, the elders who were in charge were still false immortals like Wen Xian. Below that, earth immortals who had cultivated the divine true body could be called high-ranking deacons. For someone like this man, who had void-shattering stage cultivation, even if he could not be called the top figure among the true disciples, he was certainly one of the best. The source world is not as good as you think. Although we were born in the source world, we did not feel that it was any different from other backward worlds in the past thousands or tens of thousands of years. Havril said gracefully as she stroked her hair. There wasn't much difference in the past, but now the advantages of the source world have become apparent. Not to mention the source world itself, just you people from the source world have received extraordinary attention. It is said that several immortal emperors have been paying attention to your movements at all times. In addition, there is an immortal monarch who is in charge of the development of your race. All kinds of resources are available to you at will. It is really the envy of others. Another man in the group who was at the profound void stage said with a smile. That's right, the supply of resources in the source world is indeed enviable. Furthermore, from what I know, Wei, your clan originally belonged to a large clan in the first line of source. This is even more impressive. No wonder Wei, was able to break through to the insightful emptiness stage in less than 100 years. The foundation back then, speaking of the foundation, Havril could not help but think of Xing Hui in the past. However, the man who was nominally her elder brother had already vanished over a century ago. Now, they had also deduced that even though Qing Su could be regarded as a prodigy in the face of Earth's civilization, possessing a supreme cultivation that allowed her to ignore regular vicious beasts, she was actually only at the peak of divine transformation at the very most. She was not even at her sister Qing Yusin's level, let alone standing shoulder to shoulder with her or even Daoist Changfeng. Thinking of how everyone on Earth worshipped her brother back then, Havril could not help but feel a little amused. The peak of the divine transformation stage. Not to mention those immortal sects, even in the meteor sect where they were currently at, a peak of the divine transformation stage cultivation was not even qualified to become a true disciple of the meteor sect. At most, he could only be considered an inner disciple. This was also because she had speculated that Xing Hui was at the peak of the divine transformation stage. If he was not at the peak of the divine transformation stage but an ordinary divine transformation stage cultivator, at the level of an outer disciple, the meteor sect could take in as many disciples of this level as they wanted. In some large-scale operations, they would at most play the role of cannon fodder. Thinking of this, Havrel shook her head and quickly banished those laughable thoughts from her mind. We're here. We're almost home. Our home should be up ahead. While Havrel was distracted, Qing Yusin became slightly happy. Is this your home? It doesn't seem to be the center of the source world's people. Bing Li, who had a good relationship with Havrel, looked around and asked curiously, Havrel, wasn't your family a big family in the source world back then? Why didn't you live in the Source Mountain Range? The Source Mountain Range is the core of the source world's cultivators. I remember that there's a medium-sized immortal vein there. It was bestowed by the immortal emperor. The efficiency of cultivators cultivating there is more than 10 times faster than ordinary spirit veins. Ever since our source world's federal government was disbanded and there were no external threats, my father and mother chose to live in seclusion in the mountains. Although my mother's family still has a lot of influence in the source world, my father has completely settled down. He no longer wants to fight for anything, so he chose to live here. My mother had no choice but to leave the Source Mountain Range with my father and live here. Havrel said. In the struggle for the Great Tao, if you don't advance, you'll fall behind. Uncle's way of thinking won't do. Havrel, when you go back this time, you have to have a good talk with your father. Your source world has such a unique resource. How can you not use it well? Even if you don't go to the Source Mountain Range to occupy a spirit origin, you should at least move to the Source Mountain Range, right? The quality of the medium-sized immortal vein in the Source Mountain Range is 1 or 2 grades higher than our meteor sects. In other words, cultivating there is 4 times faster than cultivating in our meteor sect. Dao Tianfeng said solemnly. The immortal Dao civilization relied heavily on Yuan Qi. Other than talent and resources, cultivation speed was directly linked to spirit veins and immortal veins. Ordinary spirit veins had twice the cultivation effect of ordinary spirit veins. Superior spirit veins were twice the cultivation effect of ordinary spirit veins. Superior spirit veins were twice the cultivation effect of ordinary spirit veins. Superior spirit veins were immortal veins, which were usually occupied by Tai immortals. As for superior immortal veins, they belonged to zenith immortals. The meteor sect was a sect with a true immortal. They occupied a small supreme-grade spirit vein that could provide for 10,000 people on average. Among them, there were only 100 spirit origins. Compared to immortal veins that could provide for 1,000,000 people and 10,000 immortal origins, the meteor sect was naturally 1.5 grades lower. I'll talk to my father about this when I get back. Back then, because of Xing Hui. Due to certain reasons, our family and the higher-ups of the Source Mountain Range still have some friendship. If my father is willing to seek help from those people, they will more or less give our family some face. Even if they don't give us an immortal origin, it won't be a problem for us to move to the Source Mountain Range to live. That's for the best. Currently, your source world has the Immortal Emperor and the Grand Unity Immortal Monarch personally taking care of you. Your path of cultivation will naturally be smooth. However, such a good thing won't last long. Once there's an unforeseen event, the peaceful situation of your source world will be disrupted. Who knows what will happen in the future? Therefore, the only way is to take advantage of the current peace in the world to reap as many benefits as possible and raise your cultivation to a higher realm as soon as possible. Only then will you have more hope of surviving in the future turmoil. Dao Tianfeng said earnestly and earnestly. Havrel nodded. She had entered the meteor sect and learned from some of the sect's ancient records that the world in front of her was far from as safe as they had imagined. Even an immortal civilization that was so powerful that it had a great divine ability expert overseeing it could only ensure its own survival in the cracks. No one knew when the entire immortal civilization would meet with a calamity. For the sake of her family, for the sake of her future safety, after returning this time, she had no choice but to be forceful and drag her family into the Source Mountain range. "I'm back, I'm back." Accompanied by a series of cheers, the flying boat had already landed outside Qing Yuming's courtyard. Qing Yusin, who could not wait, immediately alighted on her sword and rushed into the courtyard. "Father, Mother, I'm back. Xin is back. It's good that you're back. It's good that you're all back." Haitang, who heard the voice, immediately walked out from inside. Mother and daughter had been separated for many years. Naturally, they were overjoyed to see each other again. "Mother." At this moment, Havrol led a group of people down the flying boat. After greeting Haitang, she turned to Qing Yuming who had just walked out of the courtyard and nodded slightly. "Father." However, when her gaze fell on Xing Hui who had come out with Qing Yuming, she was slightly taken aback. Then, her beautiful eyes widened in disbelief. Not long ago, she had thought of this elder brother who had mysteriously disappeared for hundreds of years. She did not expect to be able to see him when she returned home this time. Was she hallucinating? Haitang, who was at the side, was afraid that Havrol's words would be disrespectful to this great figure who was on equal footing with the Void Transformation Celestial Duke. She hurriedly said, "Havrol, hurry up and call you big brother Tsing Hui. Your big brother Tsing Hui is personally accompanied by the great Void Transformation Celestial Duke. You can't be rude." "Void Transformation Celestial Duke?" Havrol, who was shocked for a moment, quickly regained her senses. After all, in her heart, Tsing Hui, who was only at the peak of the divine transformation stage, was not a big deal. There was no need for her to be careful around him like she was on Earth. After hearing her mother's words, she could not help but laugh. "Mother, what nonsense are you talking about? Don't you know what kind of great figure a Void Transformation Celestial Duke is?" "A Celestial Duke? He's a Celestial Duke who can oversee a galaxy. Perhaps you know that a Celestial Duke is respected, but you probably don't know to what extent a Celestial Duke is respected, right? Let me tell you, in our Milky Way galaxy, there are hundreds of thousands of civilizations, but each Milky Way galaxy only has one true immortal, or even a false immortal, a great existence like the immortal monarch of the Void Transformation realm. The star areas he oversees usually have dozens, or even hundreds of Milky Way galaxies. Millions, tens of millions, or even hundreds of millions of civilizations have to completely obey the orders of the immortal monarch of the Void Transformation realm. Now you understand how great an existence like the immortal monarch of the Void Transformation realm is. Chapter 874. Wire, I'm telling the truth. Haitang immediately became anxious. She was afraid that her daughter would make the same mistake again. "All right, Madam Haitang. We're all family. Why bother with such trivial matters?" Tsing Hui said. At the same time, he turned to Haitang and said, "These are your friends from your sect, right? Come in and have a seat." Taoist Changfeng nodded slightly in a reserved manner. At the same time, he turned to Haitang and said, "Wire, this is my elder brother, Tsing Hui, elder brother." Taoist Changfeng was slightly startled. Then, the smile on his face became much more cordial. "So it's Taoist Tsing Hui. I'm Taoist Changfeng, a true disciple of the Meteor Sect's Hidden Dragon ranking. Greetings. You're a guest. Come in and have a seat." Tsing Hui didn't show any special expression. He only said this out of politeness. The woman named Bingley smiled and whispered to the other man, "Our Meteor sect is one of the largest sects near the source world. Only the top 100 true disciples are qualified to be listed on the Hidden Dragon ranking. It's very important. However, it's obvious that Taoist Xing Hui doesn't even know what the hidden dragon ranking is. Although the people of the source world are blessed with natural resources, they've only been in our immortal Tao civilization for a little over 100 years. It's reasonable for them to have shallow knowledge. The man smiled faintly and transmitted his voice. At the same time, he said, however, since this Xing Hui is junior sister Haitang's elder brother, we have to give her some face. Don't say such things again. That's right. Bingley said. She raised her head slightly and walked into the courtyard with a proud expression. After entering the door, Haitang carefully sensed the spirit qi in the surroundings. It was even worse than the meteor sect. She frowned and said, Father, Mother, if you cultivate in such a poor spirit qi environment, I'm afraid you'll fall behind others in the future. Why don't you go to the Source Mountain Range? I remember that when our Earth civilization had just merged with the immortal Tao civilization, Father, you were one of the top 100 experts of our Earth civilization. Qing Yuming waved his hand with a smile. The Origin Mountain Range is too noisy, and I'm not used to it. I feel quite comfortable here. As for our cultivation, we're currently under the protection of the immortal Tao civilization, and the Origin Mountain Range has a void immortal monarch personally watching over us. Even if we cultivate to the return to void stage, or even ascend to immortality, how useful can we be? It's better to take advantage of the fact that I'm still in good health and enjoy the rest of my life. Uncle Qing, you're wrong. We may live in the territory of the immortal Tao civilization and have true immortals, great immortal lords, and supreme immortal emperors above us, but that's not a reason for us to not think about improving ourselves. Our current situation isn't very good, and there are powerful enemies outside. Under these circumstances, every cultivator of the immortal Tao civilization should work hard and strive to ascend the immortal Tao as soon as possible, contributing our strength to the conquest of the immortal Tao. A man stepped forward and said in a deep voice. Qing Yuming glanced at the man who spoke and was startled. For a moment, he didn't know how to answer. Xing Hui watched from the side and couldn't help but shake his head. Everyone has their own aspirations and can't be forced. Since my father has no intention of wandering on the path of cultivation, then let him be. Taoist Xing Hui, you're wrong. Cultivation is a transformation of life. Even if a mortal cultivator cultivates the golden core, their lifespan won't exceed 10,000 years. However, if they can achieve the immortal Tao, they can easily stay in the world for 100,000 years. If they can become true immortals, then they'll truly live forever and be immortal. Don't you want to live with your family and friends forever? Instead, you want to see your family grow old a few thousand years later and endure the separation of life and death? Taoist Chang Feng said calmly, in order to achieve the immortal Tao early, the external environment is of utmost importance. The Origin Mountain Range was bestowed by the immortal emperor with a medium-sized immortal vein. This kind of treatment is something that many first-rate sects don't have. Moreover, even if Uncle Qing doesn't think for himself, you should think for your children. Junior sisters Wei, and Xian have a bright future ahead of them. If Uncle Qing can go around and move back to the Origin Mountain Range to enjoy the benefits of the immortal vein, I believe that Wei, and Xian's cultivation will be smoother and they'll be able to break through to higher realms faster. The Origin Mountain Range, Qing Yuming couldn't help but frown when he thought of the people in the Origin Mountain Range who schemed and plotted against each other for the distribution of cave abodes. Back then, he was willing to lay down his life for the sake of the country and the people. However, with the disintegration of the federal government, he had lost his direction of advancement and had fallen into decadence. Now that a few decades had passed, he had gradually gotten used to this kind of life and liked the dullness in front of him. If he wanted to go to the Origin Mountain Range to fight for his own benefits like before. Father, just do as you wish. If you want to go to the Origin Mountain Range, we'll go. If you don't want to go, it's fine as long as we don't go. Xing Hui could see that Qing Yuming was in a difficult position and said. After that, he glanced at Havril and Qing Yusin. If father is worried about my two sisters, I'll ask the Void Transformation Immortal Duke to take care of them when the time comes. I might even be able to find some connections and have them become disciples of some immortal duke so that they can cultivate immortal arts. Qing Yuming felt relieved when he heard Xing Hui's words. His son was on equal footing with the void transformation immortal duke and was even called a immortal duke. There was no need for him to worry about such a small matter. When he thought of this, a smile appeared on Qing Yuming's face. Just as he was about to say something, the woman named Bingli couldn't help but burst into laughter, attracting everyone's attention. When Bingli realized she had lost her composure, she hurriedly said, I'm sorry. I just thought it was a little funny. That's why. I'm sorry, please continue. Don't mind me. Havril, who was standing at the side, naturally knew what Bingli was laughing about. She felt her cheeks heating up. She hurriedly said to Xing Hui in dissatisfaction, Xing Hui, what are you talking about? A void transformation immortal duke is a great person. Why would he have the time and energy to spare on us? Before Havril could finish speaking, a figure suddenly appeared. It was a man with an immortal aura. When he appeared, his voice rang out, Immortal Duke Xing Hui, I'm sorry to disturb you. The Immortal Emperors Zhang Hai and Purple Gold Immortal Emperors have invited you to a banquet. Would it be possible for you to come to the Zhang Hai Immortal Palace, Immortal Duke Xing Hui? Immortal Emperor Zhang Hai and Purple Gold Immortal Emperors? Havril, who was speaking, stopped abruptly when she heard these two names. When she saw the middle-aged man who had suddenly appeared and whom she had seen on television more than once, her breathing stopped abruptly. Void Transformation Immortal Duke? It's the Void Transformation Immortal Duke's true body. Oh my god, the Void Transformation Immortal Duke's true body has appeared. Moreover, he's right beside us. Wait, what did the Void Transformation Immortal Duke say? The disciples from the Meteor sect were shocked for a moment. When they finally understood the meaning behind the Void Transformation Immortal Duke's words, their voices came to an abrupt halt. Immortal Emperor Zhang Hai and Purple Gold Immortal Emperors? Even though Qing Su had no idea why the two Immortal Emperors had summoned him, he was still within the territory of the Immortal Civilization after all, so he could not just ignore the Immortal Emperor's summons. He immediately replied, Alright, let's go right now. Immortal Duke Xing Hui, please come with me. The Void Transformation Immortal Duke said before he took a step forward. Xing Hui looked at Qing Yuming and said, I'll make a move first. I'll come back and discuss your plans with you, father. Hurry up and go. Immortal Emperor. That's the legendary Supreme Immortal Emperor. Qing Yuming forced himself to calm down. However, his voice still trembled slightly when he mentioned the Immortal Emperor. Xing Hui nodded. In a flash, he had already left with the Void Transformation Immortal Duke. His speed was so fast that no one, including Dao Changfeng, the true disciple of the Meteor sect who was at the void-shattering stage, noticed him. Quite a while after the void-forming Immortal Lord and Qing Su left, Havril, Daoist Changfeng, and the others gradually recovered from their shock. They could not help but shiver when they thought about what they had done. This. Xing Hui. How did he? Madame Haitang looked at Havril with a hint of resentment in her eyes. I told you that Xing Hui was chatting happily with the Void Transformation Immortal Duke when he arrived. But you didn't tell me that he's a Immortal Duke. Havril had a bitter expression on her face. It's hard for us to believe this. Qing Yuming could hear the worry in Havril's voice and said, no matter what, he's still your brother. He won't be angry at you over such a small matter. Don't worry about this. As long as the two of you stay united and love each other, I believe it won't be long before Xing Hui accepts you. Havril heaved a sigh of relief when she heard Qing Yuming's words. The more he learned about the immortal Dao civilization, the more he understood how important an immortal monarch was. Just as she had explained on behalf of her mother, an immortal monarch could decide the fate of thousands of civilizations. This was not just empty talk. Immortal Duke. Immortal Duke. My brother is a Grand Unity Celestial Duke. This is amazing. Qing Yu Xian, who was at the side, finally regained her senses. She could not help but cry out in joy, with a grand Unity Celestial Duke as our helper, let's see who dares to bully us in the Meteor sect. Immortal Duke. Junior Sister Havril, there's actually a grand Unity Celestial Duke in your family. Dao Changfeng smiled wryly. Initially, he was in love with High Wire and wanted to meet her parents. However, after learning that there was a Supreme Unity Celestial Duke in High Wire's family, he knew he would never be able to match up to High Wire in this lifetime. Bing Li and the others, who were chatting happily with Havril not long ago, had a change in attitude as well. Their eyes were filled with reverence when they looked at the sisters. They already understood that from this moment onwards, the lives of Havril and her sister would definitely undergo a huge change. They would no longer be in the same world as them. This was the power of a Grand Unity Celestial Duke. Even if the Grand Unity Celestial Duke did not say anything, this change would definitely appear in the following days. Havril and Qing Yuexian, who were about the same level as them a second ago, would become gods. Chapter 875. Immortal Lord Xing Hui, please. The two immortal emperors, Vast Sea and Purple Gold, as well as 7-Star Senior, are in this palace. The immortal lord led Xing Hui into a palace that looked like a gourd that had been magnified tens of thousands of times. Xing Hui looked at the huge gourd and the Purple Gold immortal emperor's title. He had a vague idea of what was going on, but with a thought, he quickly stepped into the palace. There were already many experts present in the palace. Aside from the Vast Sea Immortal Emperor, the Purple Gold Immortal Emperor, and the 7-Star Sword Spirit, there were also more than a dozen peak Grand Luo Immortals present. In particular, there was a slightly plump old man sitting at the head of the table. His aura was unfathomable. When Xing Hui looked at him, it was as if he had seen the true essence of the world, the embodiment of all things. Even the parts that were revealed were enough to inspire Xing Hui. If these inspirations were to appear in the hands of a world creation expert, they would be able to break through to the primal chaos realm within a few decades and become a supreme overlord overseeing a region. This is a great Dao master who transformed his body into Dao. My body is my Dao. Xing Hui's heart trembled violently. They were both first-level Dao experts, but his Dao was so weak that it wasn't even worth mentioning. Even if he used the special characteristics of his great Dao, he could at most escape from a sovereign who had cultivated the origin sacred body. He was still far from being able to contend against a sovereign, but this man in front of him, they were both Daos, but once he truly activated the power of the great Dao in his body, his might would definitely be as vast as an abyss, and he would be able to easily defeat existences at the level of a ruler. There seems to be only one great Dao master in the immortal Dao civilization who transformed his body into Dao. The Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasures. Xing Hui immediately recognized the man in front of him. Didn't they say that only the Vast Sea Immortal Emperor, the Purple Gold Immortal Emperor, and the 7-Star Sword Spirit had summoned him? Why were there so many immortal emperors now? Even the Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasures had appeared here. Could it be they had studied Earth and learned about the existence of the Fortune Divine Jade in the Divine Tree's barrier? Your Excellency Xing Hui, right? You don't have to be nervous. The Lord of Myriad Treasures sensed the subtle changes in Xing Hui's emotions and instantly guessed what he was thinking. He couldn't help but smile. Don't worry, we have no intention of harming you. Greetings, Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasures. Xing Hui pondered for a moment. Then, he stepped forward and bowed as a junior. Little fellow, you don't have to think too much about it. Perhaps you have a big secret from the source world, and that big secret is most likely that supreme treasure. However, after a few days of discussion, we've already given up on that supreme treasure. Otherwise, do you think we would have specially sent someone to invite you over? I'm afraid he'll capture you and interrogate you about the whereabouts of that supreme treasure. At this moment, the 7-Star Sword Spirit spoke. His expression was rather amiable. When Xing Hui heard the 7-Star Sword Spirit's words, he hesitated for a moment before nodding slightly. Just as the seven-star sword spirit had said, if they really intended to harm him, there was no need for so many empty words. They could have just captured him and interrogated him. He might be able to escape unscathed from the encirclement of several Grand Luo Celestials. Even if there were more than 10 Grand Luo Celestials, he was still confident he could escape. However, if he were to face a great divine ability like the Lord of Myriad Treasures, there was nothing he could do. The difference in energy level between the two was too great. We have more or less guessed what the treasure in your possession is. I reckon that you have relied on that treasure to achieve what you have today. Of course, even though that treasure has helped you a lot, it is mainly because of your talent. After all, according to what I know, that treasure has actually been split into 4 parts. Among the 4 parts, only one of them is in the source world. The other 2 parts are in the Master of Chaos possession. As for the last part, I don't know where it has gone. Perhaps it is in the hands of the Time Master, or perhaps it is in the hands of the Master of Gods, 4 parts. 2 of them are in the hands of the Master of Chaos. Tsing Hui's heart skipped a beat. The Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasures nodded with a hint of sadness in his eyes. The loss of the supreme treasure is all because of our incompetence. Tsing Hui was puzzled when he heard the Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasures' words. It seemed, these people thought he only had 1 piece of the Fortune Divine Jade and that the other 2 pieces were in the hands of the Master of Chaos. However, the truth was, the Master of Chaos did not have the pieces of the Fortune Divine Jade at all. The 2 pieces were in his hands. Wait a minute. As for the other 2 pieces of Fortune Divine Jade, one of them was obtained from the Divine Wilderness Great World's Eastern Qian Ancient God Jun's cultivation cave, while the second piece was on the Fortune mainland. From this, it could be seen that, these 2 pieces of Fortune Divine Jade were originally in the Master of Primal Chaos territory. It was just that they were not in the Master of Primal Chaos hands. In that case, what exactly happened between the Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasures and the other's knowledge and the wandering of the Fortune Divine Jade? A broken supreme treasure may allow one to become a great divine master, but it will be extremely difficult to progress further. Especially now that the Heavenly Tao is broken and the Great Tao is incomplete, it is not easy for an ordinary person to rely on such a supreme treasure to reach the Great Divine Master realm. On the contrary, although you are not a great divine master now, in our opinion, the supreme treasure in your possession will definitely be much more effective than if it was passed to us. Therefore, we do not have any other thoughts about the treasure in your possession. The Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasures said with a smile. Although Tsing Hui did not completely trust him, he was relieved. Thank you for your help, Heavenly Lord. This was also because they thought he only had 1 piece of the Fortune Divine Jade, so they were magnanimous. If they knew that Tsing Hui had almost completed the Fortune Divine Jade and only had a small piece left, Tsing Hui estimated that there was an 80 to 90% chance that they would directly snatch it. Can you let me feel the great Tao law that you have comprehended? Of course. Tsing Hui said. In the next moment, he activated the characteristics of the great Tao of unity in his body. In an instant, the surrounding heaven and earth Yuan Qi was rapidly absorbed by him, transformed, and condensed into one. Immediately after, the power of the great Tao on Tsing Hui's body changed again. Much of the heaven and earth Yuan Qi was rapidly repelled. All the information that passed through his area dissipated and was lost. This is the characteristic of my great Tao of unity. It can allow me to switch between existence and non-existence. If I exist, I will simplify everything until I devour and transform it into the power of the great Tao of unity. If I don't exist, I will repel everything, as if I am detached from the world. Any energy fluctuations around me will be broken down and lost. This power of the great Tao is very domineering. It is a bit similar to a celestial body in the starry sky. Qing Su nodded. I have indeed comprehended it based on the black holes in the celestial bodies. However, the essence of my great way is a universal singularity. It's just a pity that as I have never actually seen a universal singularity, my great way is still incomplete even now. It's only a fledgling. A universe singularity. Rumor has it that if you continuously trace the origin of a universe, its end point will be a singularity. The singularity you speak of is this singularity? Yes, similarly, it is the word one, in Tao begets one. Therefore, I call my great Tao law the great Tao of unity. A universe singularity is indeed equivalent to the word one born from the great Tao. It is precisely because of the appearance of the universe singularity that the universe and all living things are further developed. It is like Tao begets one begets two begets three, and three begets all living things. The heavenly Lord of plentiful treasures nodded in agreement. At the same time, he sighed with emotion. Your great Tao is extremely profound, and it is a brand new great Tao that is completely compatible with you. With this great Tao, your life essence can transform and reach the level of chaos. If you don't die along the way, your future achievements will definitely be far above us. We are all cultivators of the ancient great Tao, but now, our great Tao is broken, and our cultivation has fallen by a large margin compared to our peak. If not for the many treasures in our hands, we would not be a match for any of the 21 experts of the Master of Chaos, the Master of Gods, or the Master of Time. Moreover, as our great Tao continues to break, our cultivation will become weaker and weaker. One day, our great Tao will disperse, and we will become mortals, or even dust under the erosion of time. Is there no way to avoid it? The heavenly Lord of plentiful treasures shook his head. With the great Tao broken, who can do anything about it? Unless someone can reshape the heavenly Tao and still choose to use the ancient great Tao as its foundation. However, to do this, the mighty power needed is unbelievably vast. Even the Tao ancestor at his peak might not be able to do this. This difficulty is equivalent to creating a great existence that is not inferior to the Master of Chaos, the Master of Time, or the Master of Gods. At this point, the heavenly Lord of plentiful treasures' expression dimmed. In fact, with his knowledge and experience, all of this was minimal. The heavenly Tao was the moment when the great Pan achieved eternity and returned to the past. It was created with the body of the past and contained the power of eternity. Otherwise, why would the heavenly Tao be besieged by the Master of Time, the Master of Chaos, the Master of Gods, and a series of other great beings and be shattered? However, the heavenly Lord of plentiful treasures clearly did not know about these secrets. Unless the great primordial ancestor, Pan, is willing to come back from the river of time, no one can reshape the heavenly Tao. Our current extravagant hope is to preserve the inheritance of the immortal Tao civilization. That is all. An elderly immortal emperor sighed. And to preserve the immortal Tao civilization and continue its legacy, we must have an existence that can stand against the Master of Time, the Master of Chaos, and the Master of Gods. We have lost all hope, but you, Tsing Hui, are different. The Lord of Myriad Treasures continued the exalted immortal emperor's words and looked at Qing Su with shining eyes. There was a hint of anticipation on his face. You are a being of chaos, and the essence of your life is no less than that of the Lord of Time, the Lord of Chaos, or the Lord of Gods. You are the one of us who has the greatest chance of standing up to these peak existences. If you can one day attain the great Tao and ascend to the origin Tao, the continuation of the immortal Tao civilization will no longer be an extravagant hope. We've discussed this for several days, and we've finally come to a decision. We've invited you here to gather the foundation of our civilization and lend you a hand. Chapter 876. Gather the foundations of the immortal Tao civilization and lend me a hand? Tsing Hui was taken aback by this outcome. He found it hard to believe. That's right. Gather the foundations of the immortal Tao civilization and lend you a hand. The Lord of Myriad Treasures repeated, while our civilization of the immortal Tao cannot stand shoulder to shoulder with any of the top chaos beings like the Lord of Time, the Lord of Chaos, or the Lord of Gods, our civilization of the celestial Tao still has ancient legacies, including a realm that was extremely precious to the exalted immortal emperor, Exalted Heaven. Exalted Heaven. Exalted Heaven is an extremely unique existence. Transformed by the great Tao laws of the immortal Tao civilization, an endless stream of chaos energy is attracted to exalted heaven and transformed into great Tao origin. If a grand unity immortal lord can comprehend the mysteries of the great Tao origin, he has a chance of becoming the exalted immortal emperor and stepping into the 20th level. However, apart from these functions, exalted heaven has another special function, which is to simulate a chaotic environment. For cultivators below the quasi-saint realm, for those below the level of great divinity, such an environment can be called a land of death. Even great divinities can only live in it temporarily, but for creatures of chaos, this simulated environment, which is slightly less threatening than the real chaotic environment, can allow them to transform themselves into true chaotic beings in advance. Transform into true chaos beings. You're saying that I'm not a true chaos being yet? The Lord of Myriad Treasures smiled and said, chaos creatures are chaos creatures because they can travel freely in the chaos void. Those who have never stepped into the chaos void are like flowers in a greenhouse. They will never understand the vastness and greatness of the chaos void. The Lord of Myriad Treasures glanced at Xing Hui with a complicated expression. In layman's terms, we're like big fish in a pond, while you're a fry born in the ocean. Even though we're larger than you, the characteristics of freshwater fish determine the upper limit of our growth. You, on the other hand, are different. Once you return to the ocean, infinite possibilities await you. Perhaps it won't be long before you surpass us by virtue of the fundamental differences between us. Qing Su understood what the Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasure was planning when he heard that. The chaos was the true home of chaos beings. It was just like marine fish living in the territory of river fish. Not only was it not beneficial, but it was also harmful. After a long time, it would only lead to the death of the marine fish. As a creature of chaos, it was the same for living in many macro worlds. This was also why Xing Hui had clearly comprehended the great path of unification, but his progress over the years was extremely slow. His combat strength had improved twice. One time, he relied on the four supreme swordsmanship of the Void Sword Pavilion, and the other time, it was the feedback of the sword spirit of Scarlet Abyss. On the contrary, most of the time, not only did his great path of unification not improve, but it was also affected by the interference of many forces, affecting the operation of his own great path. Then, thank you for your help, Heavenly Monarch. Since you were born in the Source World and obtained that supreme treasure, you can be considered to be part of our lineage. We will naturally do our best to help you. Since the Lord of Myriad Treasures was now expressing his goodwill to Xing Hui, he would naturally say beautiful words. Xing Hui, you can go ahead and cultivate. Being able to use the chaos environment set up by the Daluo Heaven and directly face the process of Daluo Heaven transforming the chaos vitality into the origin of the Great Path will definitely be of great benefit to the perfection of your Great Path. As for how far you can rely on these benefits to reach, it will completely depend on your own fortune. The Seven-Star Sword Spirit also spoke at this moment. Xing Hui once again expressed his gratitude to the Seven-Star Sword Spirit. He understood that it was thanks to the Seven-Star Sword Spirit that he had the opportunity to cultivate in the Daluo Heaven, comprehend the power of the Great Path, and experience the weakened chaos environment at a close distance. If not for this, he could not figure out why the Lord of Myriad Treasures, the Purple Gold Immortal Emperor, and the others would give such a precious opportunity to him. Only I can open the Daluo Heaven, so I will personally take Xing Hui there. The Lord of Myriad Treasures stood up and said to Xing Hui at the same time, don't resist. After saying that, his figure moved, and the surrounding spatial laws automatically retreated. As the surrounding environment became blurry, the Lord of Myriad Treasures quickly began to shuttle through the void with Xing Hui. The Lord of Myriad Treasures was extremely fast. As the Lord of Myriad Treasures shuttled through the void, Xing Hui could clearly feel that he was getting farther and farther away from where he was just now. Moreover, he was flying in another direction. This direction was not simply east, west, north, south, up, down, left, right, but a direction that Xing Hui had never come into contact with before. It was like a mortal walking on the surface of a star. He could understand forward, backward, left, and right, but he could not understand the specific concept of down or up because he had never had such an experience. The current Xing Hui was like a person who had never left the earth. Under the lead of the Lord of Myriad Treasures, he rushed into the void. Moreover, it was not a void in the conventional sense. Instead, he directly left the atmosphere of the star and arrived outside the atmosphere. He had never left the gravitational force of the star, but was in the middle of the atmosphere. It's here. The Lord of Myriad Treasures brought Xing Hui to this void and sighed with emotion. The Dao Ocean was the highest achievement of the immortal Dao civilization. It was equivalent to the supreme celestial realm. Even in the earth immortal realm where immortals gathered, the Dao Ocean was still a place that countless living beings yearned for. Every time the Lord of Myriad Treasures saw the Dao Ocean, he would associate it with the glory of the immortal Dao civilization when it was at its peak. Unfortunately, with the passage of time, the glory was no longer there. The current immortal Dao civilization was no longer as glorious as it was in the past. Xing Hui also looked around. He could not sense any abnormalities in this void, but he could determine that their current location was probably in the depths of the void. It was not horizontal or vertical, but a kind of true interior of the void. Unfortunately, the Dao Ocean was clearly concealed by a kind of concealment divine ability. Although the Lord of Myriad Treasures said that the Dao Ocean was here, he could not sense any trace of it. Fortunately, the Lord of Myriad Treasures reminisced about the past for a moment and quickly focused his attention on the void in front of him. As he pinched the laws, the power of the Great Dao in the surroundings gradually manifested, forming an extremely complicated Great Dao talisman. These Great Dao talisman gradually condensed into one under the Lord of Myriad Treasures' control, forming a spatial door. After a full hour, the spatial door finally formed completely. A vast world that was completely different from the starry sky in front of them suddenly appeared from the spatial door. When the spatial door appeared, Xing Hui also sensed the auras of several Dao Ocean immortals. Moreover, these Dao Ocean immortals' auras were clearly stronger than those of Immortal Emperor Zijin and Immortal Emperor Canghai. They were clearly on the verge of breaking through to the great divinity realm. Lord of Heaven. The Lord of Heaven is here. Could there be another immortal lord with potential or an immortal emperor who is on the verge of breaking through? The Lord of Myriad Treasures stepped into the spatial door with Xing Hui. Immediately, several divine consciousnesses were transmitted from inside. The Lord of Myriad Treasures nodded to these immortal emperors one by one. Kang Long, Shanli, Qingzhu, Yun Lan, Lord of Heaven, this is. After everyone bowed to the Lord of Myriad Treasures one by one, their eyes quickly fell on Xing Hui who was behind the Lord of Myriad Treasures. Xing Hui had formed his own great Dao. Ordinary people could not sense his depth at all. Before he displayed his miraculous abilities, even these Dao Ocean immortals before him were no exception. This is Daoist Xing Hui. I brought Daoist Xing Hui here this time to send him to the Heavenly Gate to cultivate. The Heavenly Gate. Shanli was shocked. The Heavenly Gate is permeated with primordial chaos qi. This primordial chaos qi has yet to be transformed into origin energy by the great Dao of Dao Ocean. Only those with great divine power can withstand it. Even if we Dao Ocean immortals go in, we will have to retreat from the Heavenly Gate to rest for a while. The entire process is harmful. This Daoist can cultivate in the Heavenly Gate. Could he be a new Lord of Heaven? It's a long story. I'll bring him to the Heavenly Gate first. We can talk about it later. The Lord of Myriad Treasures said as he led the Lord of Heaven forward again. As they hurried along, Xing Hui quickly realized that the Dao Ocean was different from the outside world. In the outside world, the Great Dao was obscure and the primordial chaos qi was not obvious. However, in the Dao Ocean, the Great Dao of Dao was like a three-dimensional projection. Ordinary people could read it to their heart's content. In the sky above the Dao Ocean, there was an endless stream of extremely pure energy. If anyone comprehended the Great Dao of Dao, they only needed to refine the pure energy and their cultivation would immediately improve by leaps and bounds. Cultivating in such a place for a year was probably more efficient than cultivating in the outside world for tens of thousands of years. As expected of the highest heaven of the immortal Tao civilization. Xing Hui said sincerely. It's a pity that the Dao Ocean is in ruins. It can only support 5 or 6 immortal emperors and 100 or so immortal lords. Moreover, the immortal emperors have to cultivate in pairs. Otherwise, the phenomena caused by each immortal emperor's comprehension of the great Tao would disturb the cultivation of others. If they weren't careful, they would run the risk of cultivation deviation. It wouldn't be like the Dao Ocean of the past, when there were hundreds and thousands of origin immortal emperors in seclusion. The heavenly lord of myriad treasures sighed. Before long, he arrived below the heaven gate with Qing Su. The heavenly gate was where the Dao Ocean converted the primordial chaos qi. Primordial chaos qi with a diameter of over 10,000 kilometers was visible to the naked eye as it poured down. This area of 10,000 kilometers was not primordial chaos, but it was close to it. When Xing Hui arrived in this region, he could clearly sense that the circulation of his great Tao had become more agile, and the essence of his soul was vaguely cheering. However, while he was cheering, he also felt an immense pressure when he was freed from the gray energy. His soul and even the great Tao laws he had comprehended felt like they could not bear the weight of this pressure. You can cultivate here. If you feel that you can't take it anymore, you can leave the heaven's gate. As for how much you can improve in this cultivation, whether you can completely transform into a true life form of chaos will depend on your own fortune. Many thanks, Lord of Myriad Treasures. Xing Hui bowed again. Go. With that, the Lord of Myriad Treasures turned and left. Preparations for a new book will begin on Wednesday. Normally, a new book's preparation period will take 1 to 2 months. If 2 books are prepared at the same time, it will be impossible to store more manuscripts. The release of the old book will also decrease and become irregular. However, Chengfen will do his best to make sure that the 2 books will be updated next weekend. Chapter 877. Chaotic Vital Energy. Xing Hui went deep into the chaotic vital energy and carefully sensed its nature. It was somewhat different from the great Tao that Xing Hui understood. The chaotic vital energy did not have a direct effect on the great Tao. Instead, it gave Xing Hui a feeling that it was an empty space. Yes, it was like a vacuum in the vast starry sky. For those mortals who had yet to transform into cosmic life forms, if they entered the starry sky outside a star's atmosphere, they would naturally die. However, for true cosmic life forms, there were many things that mortals could not sense in the endless starry sky without any matter or atmosphere, such as magnetic fields, rays, radiation, particles, and so on. However, non-cosmic life forms could not sense these things at all. Once they were exposed to these rays, death would be the only thing that awaited them. At this moment, Xing Hui had gone directly from the atmosphere to the starry sky. Although the starry sky looked very empty, it did not have much of an impact on Xing Hui. On the contrary, his great Tao seemed to have broken free from the suppression of the internal environment and became more active. It was like breaking through the sound barrier in a star was extremely difficult due to the obstruction of the atmosphere, but in the starry sky, it was all very easy. Xing Hui's current situation was the same. The unprecedentedly active Great Tao and the medium that carried the continuation of the Great Tao allowed Xing Hui to have a new understanding of his own Great Tao in an instant. Moreover, this kind of understanding could be said to be growing day by day. It was as if a door that had been tightly closed had suddenly opened to him, allowing him to truly understand what kind of world was real. Chaotic life forms. For chaotic life forms, the chaotic void is their final destination. Xing Hui muttered to himself. He was like a meteorite that traveled from the starry sky. If he stayed inside a star, he would just be an ordinary meteorite. The intelligent life forms inside the star could dismember him. However, in the vast starry sky, with the help of the unique environment of the vast starry sky, he could easily accelerate himself infinitely. When his speed increased to a certain extent, it would be easy for him to destroy a star. Xinghui stood in the midst of the chaotic vital energy. Without the interference and influence of other great Tao, his great Tao extended and changed freely, evolving towards its final form. At the same time that his grand Tao laws were ceaselessly transforming and growing, his body was tempered by the chaotic origin energy, causing it to become even more compatible with his grand Tao laws. After that, it was ceaselessly strengthened and perfected under the imperceptible influence of the convergence grand Tao, causing him to naturally be able to develop even more grand Tao laws. This was a virtuous cycle. The strengthening of great Tao and its compatibility with his body made his body stronger. As his body grew stronger, he could evolve more great Tao power to temper his body and become more compatible with the great Tao, causing his body, gradually becoming a vessel. In other words, the laws of the great Tao were changing according to the vehicles in the world. Tao transformation. This was Tao transformation. Xinghui's mind was enlightened. Suddenly, he understood what was happening to him at this moment. Apart from the Lord of Chaos and the 12 divine beasts, this was the highest achievement of the Lord of Chaos's cultivation path, Tao transformation. The Lord of Chaos's cultivation path was influenced by the 12 divine beasts. Even if the great masters of the Tao transformation realm were to evolve their great Tao to the extreme, they would be restricted by the innate upper limit of the 12 divine beasts and be unable to truly reach the level of the 12 divine beasts. In other words, there was an upper limit to their growth. But as a chaotic life form, Xinghui, he had no idea what the upper limit was. As long as the matter in this chaotic void could support it, his evolution of the great Tao could continue indefinitely until it reached the limit of what he could understand, until it could no longer be transformed or evolved. Time passed. After an indeterminate amount of time, Xinghui gradually felt that his great Tao evolution seemed to be slowing down. He diverted some of his attention to carefully size up his surroundings and quickly understood the reason. After all, the void he was in was not the real chaotic void, but the chaotic Yuan Qi transformed from Daoyu Ocean. The chaotic void formed by the chaotic Yuan Qi was obviously incomparable to the real chaotic void. In other words, the supporting effect of this chaotic void on the evolution of the great Tao was also incomparable to the real chaotic void. Now, I can already adapt to this weakened version of the chaotic void. I just don't know what the effect of stepping into the real chaotic void will be. I'll go ask the Lord of Myriad Treasures. As a great master, I don't know if he has ever been to the real chaotic void. In addition, the 10-year period I mentioned to Rockheart is about to arrive. I have to make a trip to the divine wilderness great world and explain the situation there. As Xinghui thought to himself, he consolidated his cultivation base a little. His figure flashed, and he left the range of the Elysium and flew toward the interior of Daoyu Ocean. However, not long after Xinghui left the range of the Elysium, he immediately felt the friction between his great Tao laws and the great Tao laws of Daoyu Ocean. Previously, he had lived in an environment filled with chaotic Yuan Qi, and there was no complete great Tao evolution there. Now that he had entered Daoyu Ocean, the great Tao laws appeared around him, and when they collided with his own great Tao laws, it naturally caused waves of turbulence. Xinghui was less than 1,000 kilometers away from the Elysium, and the collision between his great Tao and the great Tao laws of Daoyu Ocean set off a violent tide of laws that spread out in all directions. This feeling is somewhat similar to the friction between a fast-moving object in outer space and the atmosphere of a planet. Xinghui did his best to withdraw his great Tao laws, but due to the domineering nature of the unity law, he felt like he was about to become a black hole, devouring all the law energy around him and simplifying it until it was compatible with the unity law and became a part of it. No matter how hard he tried, he could only suppress this reaction to a radius of 100 meters. Fortunately, the ripples of great Tao laws on Xinghui had attracted the attention of the Lord of Myriad Treasures, who had yet to leave Daoyu Ocean. In a flash, he appeared in the air not far from Xinghui. After exchanging a glance with the Origin Immortal Emperors who had come with him, they all took action at the same time, manifesting their great Tao laws to suppress the ripples caused by the collision of great Tao and great Tao energy. This was to prevent the shockwaves from sweeping through Daluocean and disturbing the cultivation of the Grand Unity Immortal Lords of Daluocean, causing them to suffer from cultivation deviation. What a domineering great Tao energy! The Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasures looked at the pulses of ways that Qing Su was unable to suppress and sighed emotionally from the bottom of his heart. You really are a chaotic life form after all. In just a decade, you've actually improved so rapidly. You're probably close to becoming a true chaotic life form now. All you need to do is head to the true chaotic space and complete that final step, becoming a peak existence that's no weaker than great ability users. It's too smooth. I never thought that cultivation could be so smooth. Everything seems to be flowing naturally and effortlessly. That's because you're already a being of the chaos. Only when a being of the chaos enters the chaos can you truly be like a fish in water. If it were us who approached the heaven's gate, let alone cultivate, we'd be lucky if we didn't get injured by the chaos energy. Qing Su nodded when he heard that. Although the Lord of Myriad Treasures and the others possessed the power of Great Tao, their Great Tao was dependent on the existence of the immortal Tao civilization. Once they left the range of the immortal Tao civilization, the power of Great Tao would no longer be able to protect them. Since the Great Tao didn't exist in the chaos, they'd be fine for a short time if they went into the environment of the chaos. When do you plan to go to the chaos? The chaos is different from the outside world. No laws exist there, and even the many laws we understand are completely different from the outside world. It's a place where the Great Tao doesn't manifest. Time, space, mass, weight, density, and everything else have no basis. All living beings rely on their own Great Tao laws to exist. In other words, the chaos is a land of endless darkness, and we're like pedestrians holding a candle in the darkness. The only thing we know of is our own existence, and the only thing we can sense is ourselves. When the Lord of Myriad Treasures said this, there was a hint of reverence in his expression. Compared to the entire chaotic void, existences like us are too insignificant. Even the slightest wind and wave can extinguish this weak candle flame in our hands, causing us to fall into eternal darkness and silence. Although Tsing Hui had never seen the true chaos, his expression turned grave when he heard the Lord of Myriad Treasures' words. You ended your seclusion this time because, I want to see the true primal chaos void, Lin Feng said. You want to see the true chaos? The Lord of Myriad Treasures stared at Qing Su and pondered for a while. He sensed carefully before saying, even though I don't know if a chaotic being of your level can truly survive in the chaotic void, it shouldn't be a problem if I just take a look. However, going to the chaotic void and back will take quite a lot of time. Even if we leave the exalted heaven and head to the chaotic void, it'll still take a few decades for a round trip. If you consider the fact that you plan to cultivate, it'll take even longer. It's best if you hand over your current matters for now. That's exactly what I'm planning to do. I want to deal with any future problems first. How about we set a deadline in 100 years? Then let's do as you say. I'll go into seclusion for a while, and it won't take long. Thank you for your help, Lord of Myriad Treasures. It's no matter. I'm becoming more and more convinced of the 7 stars theory after seeing your extraordinary achievements in just 10 years. Given time, our immortal Tao civilization might really need your help to get rid of our fate of hiding from place to place. The Lord of Myriad Treasures smiled. As for making the immortal Tao civilization stand on equal footing with the Lord of Time, the Lord of Chaos, and the Lord of Gods, or even restoring the glory of the immortal Tao civilization to its peak, the Lord of Myriad Treasures didn't even think about it. After all, Tsing Hui was too far away from the 3 great existences. Chapter 878. Tsing Hui waited at the transmission array for less than 3 days before it opened. When the transmission array opened, apart from Tsing Hui, Immortal Emperor Songhai was traveling with him to the Divine Wilderness Great World. Although the Divine Wilderness Great World was equivalent to Tsing Hui's backyard, it was still the territory of the Master of Primal Chaos. The fact that the Master of Primal Chaos's territory had a transmission array that led directly to the center of the Immortal Tao civilization naturally caused many immortal emperors of the Immortal Tao civilization to be unable to eat or sleep in peace. In addition, they had clearly moved the source world countless light years away, but the transmission array was still able to accurately locate the source world. Such a powerful array aroused everyone's curiosity. Under such circumstances, Immortal Emperor Tsanghai, who was proficient in array formations, was the representative to follow Tsinghui to the fortune mainland of the divine wilderness Great World. Moreover, because he was an immortal emperor of the Immortal Tao civilization, he would only live in seclusion on the fortune mainland and would not interfere with the changes in the divine wilderness Great World. He even had a supreme treasure that the Lord of Myriad Treasures had specially refined for him to interfere with heaven's secrets and conceal his aura. It ensured that his identity as a cultivator of the Immortal Tao civilization would not be exposed under the prying eyes of ordinary powerful experts. Greetings, Your Majesty. Rockhart opened the transmission array and respectfully bowed when he saw Tsinghui and Immortal Emperor Tsanghai walk out of the transmission array. Tsinghui replied, "This is Tsanghai, a good friend of mine. From now on, he will live in seclusion on the fortune mainland to research this transmission array. You need to gather everyone and cooperate with him." "Yes." Rockhart secretly glanced at Immortal Emperor Tsanghai and committed him to memory. "Supreme Tsanghai, I'll leave the matters here to you. I'll make a trip to the Void Sword Pavilion first. Go. Don't worry, I won't bring you any trouble." Immortal Emperor Tsanghai said with a smile. The magic treasure refined by the heavenly monarch of plentiful treasures could conceal his aura before he unleashed his Immortal Emperor-level battle prowess. Thus, he could still use power equivalent to that of a supreme being, so it was reasonable for him to call himself a supreme being. Moreover, whether it was the Master of Time, the King of Gods, or the Son of Primal Chaos, there were many life forms that were equivalent to Primal Chaos autarchs. However, once they reached the 20th level, their numbers would decrease by 100-fold, or even 1,000-fold. Immortal Emperor Vast Sea's claim to be a ruler was incomparably conspicuous, but his claim to be an autarch was much more low-key. Tsinghui nodded to Immortal Emperor Tsanghai. With a flash, he was already heading for the Void Sword Pavilion. Since Tsinghui had only been away for 10 years, 10 years passed in the blink of an eye for many supreme masters of the Void Sword Pavilion. With the previous record of Tsinghui killing dozens of supreme masters of the chaotic realm, the Void Sword Pavilion did not dare to act rashly in the cooperation with Tsinghui. It was peaceful in the past 10 years. Regarding the arrival of Tsinghui, the two elders, Floating Light and Sweeping Shadow, who had a good relationship with him, immediately came out to greet him with smiles on their faces. However, when they really saw Tsinghui's figure, their smiles became slightly stiff. In the depths of their eyes, uncontrollable horror emerged. Transforming the way. Transforming the way. This is transforming the way. Impossible. How is this possible? The two elders, Floating Light and Sweeping Shadow, roared madly in their hearts. If it were not for the aura emitted from Tsinghui's body that made them fearful and in awe, they even could not help but shout out loud. But even so, Elder Floating Light's voice was still trembling. He could not wait to ask, "Sword Master Tsinghui, you are..." Tsinghui sensed the changes in his own state. He had just returned from the environment of the Daluo heaven that simulated the chaotic void. His great Tao law had also skyrocketed and could not be perfectly restrained. As a result, the great Tao law in his body was continuously dissipating. When he was out, there was even a strange phenomenon similar to that of the heavenly lord of plentiful treasures, which could make ordinary great Tao law retreat. These various characteristics were exactly the same as the great mediums who possessed the power of transforming the way under the lineage of the Master of Chaos. In fact, even if Tsinghui's current battle strength was not as good as the great mediums, there was not much of a difference. Compared to the almost insurmountable natural chasm from the traversing realm to the world creation realm, the world creation realm to the supremacy realm, and the supremacy realm to the dominator realm, the gap between the dominator realm and those who had just entered the great medium's realm was slightly smaller. Of course, this so-called slightly smaller gap was equivalent to the gap between the previous realms. In fact, the gap between the dominator realm and the great mediums was still not inferior to the gap between the Jindan realm and the great medium's realm. However, if there were enough dominators, they would have the foundation to kill the great mediums. This did not exist in the supremacy realm and the dominator realm. Unless the supremacy realm or the dominator realm had the intention to fight to the death, otherwise, no matter how many supremacies there were, they would not be able to kill the supremacy realm, and no matter how many supremacies there were, they would not be able to kill the dominator realm. Xing Hui relied on the characteristics of the creatures of chaos, coupled with the immortal eliminating sword qi that had climbed to the level of great success in the past 10 years. Naturally, he could not be compared to those veteran great mediums. However, if he faced those new great mediums, he might be able to fight them. It was just that it would be difficult to defeat them. It was not an exaggeration to say that he had transformed the way. The method I cultivate is a little special. The two elders don't have to make a fuss. Don't worry, our divine wilderness great world and your void sword pavilion are friends. We will share the distribution of the divine wilderness great world's objects. This will not change. Xing Hui said. Next, he would go to the real chaotic void to cultivate. This time, the time of cultivation would be quite long. During this period of time, he naturally had to rely on the power of the Void Sword Pavilion to guard the Divine Wilderness Great World, to prevent the Divine Wilderness Great World from being targeted by the endless number of top forces because of the high production of the objects. Hearing Xing Hui's words, although floating light and sweeping shadow slightly calmed down, they still felt a burst of bitterness in their hearts when they were close to Xing Hui. Their own great Tao laws that were compatible with the world were gradually distorted and dispersed. In the past 10 years, they had talked. The two of them had even argued with the two supreme elders, Yi Chen and Lan Xian, who had some prejudice against Xing Hui. At the same time, they speculated how many years it would take for Xing Hui to cultivate the origin sacred body and become a ruler. The two of them, under Bai Shuaing's constant encouragement, still felt that it would take at least 1,000 years, while Yi Chen and Lan Xian felt that it would definitely be 10,000 years later. However, they didn't expect that in just 10 years, this monstrous existence had not only cultivated the sacred body of origin, but also crossed the realm of the sacred body of origin. He had faintly transformed his body into the Tao and became an existence at the great divine ability level. This made no sense at all. There was no logic at all. The two elders think, with the production of the divine wilderness great world's objects, what kind of cultivation do you need to be able to intimidate the small factions and make them not dare to have any ideas about the divine wilderness great world? Xing Hui said. This, after hearing Xing Hui's words, floating light and sweeping shadow pondered for a while. In the end, floating light said, in the endless void, among the millions of worlds, a ruler can often occupy a world and even radiate their power to other worlds. The annual production of the Tao objects in a world is around 800, and more than half of these Tao objects will fall into the hands of the ruler. In other words, there are close to 500 of them. If we include their income from other worlds, the number of Tao objects they obtain every year should be around 1,000. A ruler's annual income of Tao aura is only 1,000, this number surprised Xing Hui a little. This number is already on the high side. After all, not all rulers are able to radiate their power to other worlds and have them offer Tao objects. In addition, the human heart is hard to predict. If a ruler does not have enough control over the world they are in, the sovereigns under them, as well as their subordinates who can create a world with a thought, the traversing realm, and the divine true body realm, will also be greedy for the Tao objects they discover. In this way, the amount of Tao objects that a ruler can obtain every year will be even less. This is also the reason why so many rulers are tempted when they know that the divine wilderness great world produces more than 10,000 Tao objects every year. After Elder Floating Light explained, he added, "It's not just the rulers, the sovereigns should all have their own ideas. However, our advantage is that the divine wilderness great world is rather remote. The sovereigns might not mind rushing to the divine wilderness great world to wipe out all the resistance forces there, and then send 1 or 2 rulers to stay in the divine wilderness great world to collect Tao objects. However, they might not be able to stay in the divine wilderness great world with their true bodies. In this situation, if Sword Sovereign Xinghui, if Lord Xinghui is willing to carve his great Tao imprint in this world and stay in the divine wilderness great world with his true body, I believe that even the sovereigns would withdraw from the divine wilderness great world because they are unwilling to provoke a strong enemy and the troubles they might face in ruling the world. In other words, I can solve the problem that the divine wilderness great world is facing once and for all?" Xinghui's expression was a little strange. "Yes. Unless some sovereigns are determined to take down the divine wilderness great world, the presence of a sovereigns is enough to ensure that the divine wilderness great world is not lost." Elder Floating Light nodded. His expression was also a little strange. Obviously, more than 10 years ago, Xinghui, who was still fighting hard with the sovereigns of the chaotic realm and spent a lot of effort to expel the many sovereigns who had invaded the divine wilderness great world, was able to intimidate countless sovereigns and sovereigns around him in just 10 years, and became the master of the divine wilderness great world. This kind of change in status and disparity made the Supreme Elder of the Void Sword Pavilion feel very uncomfortable. "Leave my great Tao imprint in the divine wilderness great world? Very well, I'll do it right away." As soon as Xinghui finished speaking, his figure had already soared into the air. With a thought, there was no need for any vigorous action, and the space law naturally retreated. It was as if in response to the emperor's departure, even if the emperor was not the emperor of their empire, and the emperor's country was much weaker than their empire, they would still give the other party due respect. When the 2 elders Floating Light and Sweeping Shadow saw Qing Su rise into the air and fly out of the divine wilderness world, they looked at each other and let out a long sigh. "In the end, summon all the members of our Void Sword Pavilion who have reached world creation with a thought and above. At the same time, get Yi Chen and Lanxin to come with us. Get them to open their eyes and see just what kind of monster they are dissatisfied with and even plan on continuing to be hostile towards." Chapter 879. The Endless Void. Compared to a special environment similar to the chaotic void where almost no great Tao existed, the endless void was undoubtedly much more stable. Although it was full of void storms, causing the great Tao to be in chaos, at least there was the existence of the great Tao. Cultivators above the profound void realm could still barely survive here by relying on their own understanding of the great Tao. Once a cultivator of the profound void realm was thrown into the chaotic void, not to mention the various terrifying radiation, particles, and fluctuations contained in the chaotic primordial qi, the environment where the great Tao did not exist was enough to make them completely collapse. It was like throwing a person into space. Even if he was given a spacesuit that could withstand external radiation, because there was no gravity and no kinetic energy, he could still only be suspended in space alone until he died. Compared to ordinary life forms, there is indeed a fundamental difference. The great Tao law in my body has yet to mature, and I have yet to prove my Tao. If I were to wait until I have proven my Tao before coming to places like the divine wilderness great world, it would be like throwing a whale into a small pond. There would be no way I would be able to roam freely and carefreely in the ocean. No wonder it is said that even the most powerful people rarely see the true body of the Master of Chaos. In the end, it is because the Master of Chaos does not like this kind of internal environment, so he rarely walks outside. Xinghui thought, and couldn't help but think of the highest achievement of the immortal Tao civilization, Tao ancestor Hong Jun. It was rumored that his palace was located in the chaotic space outside the 33rd layer of heaven. Then he thought of the origin of Tao ancestor Hong Jun. He was one of the 3,000 chaos demon gods, and his body was in harmony with the great Tao. He suddenly understood. The chaotic void was the home of the chaotic life. Perhaps one day, when I grow strong enough, I'll have to leave this world and stay in the primal chaos void. At the very least, I'll have to stay in the primal chaos void. At most, I'll have to condense an avatar with my thoughts and travel through the various worlds, Xinghui thought, and at the same time, he glanced at the many creatures of the Void Sword Pavilion who were rushing over. At this moment, apart from the two great elders, Floating Light and Sweeping Shadow, who had already received the news, everyone in the entire Void Sword Pavilion widened their eyes and looked at Qing Su in the depths of the void in disbelief. They looked at the figure that displayed the existence of his great way to his heart's content. Under the stimulation of this great Tao, the surrounding great Tao laws all retreated. The power of great Tao radiated from Xinghui alone was enough to destabilize the great Tao laws of Yi Chen, Lan Xian, Mingyu, and Fei Xing. It was as if the connection between the small worlds they created and the great Tao was being taken away. No. Not deprive. Instead, the laws of the great Tao had been almost completely expelled. Since there were no laws of great Tao in this void, their small worlds could no longer be strengthened by the power of great Tao. Tao transformation, this is the power of Tao transformation. Wherever I am, there is the great Tao. The great Tao is crowned as the king, and all techniques must retreat. Yi Chen felt the vast aura of the great Tao on Xinghui and felt his whole body trembling slightly. When Xinghui swept through the divine wilderness and attacked the Xinyang Great World, he had already guessed that Xinghui was very strong. If he was not strong, it was impossible for him to kill more than a dozen top forces that invaded the divine wilderness Great World and dozens of chaotic realm supreme masters. But now, when he saw Xinghui releasing the pressure of the great Tao on his body without reservation, he understood that the gap between him and Xinghui was so huge. They were not on the same level at all. What great Tao is this? It doesn't look like any of the 12 great Taos. Could it be? Is it the heterodox way? Elder Lan Xian said unwillingly. Shut up, do you want to die? Do you want to bring disaster to our Void Sword Pavilion? Elder Sweeping Shadow glared at Elder Lan Xian fiercely. The heterodox way often referred to the great Tao law passed down by the evil god. Not to mention whether Xinghui believed in the evil god and was bestowed by the evil god, just the fact that he had broken through to the great magic realm and had the power not inferior to the great magic realm was far from what the Void Sword Pavilion could provoke. Once Xinghui was enraged, it would be easy for him to kill these great elders in the chaotic realm. It would not even be difficult for him to destroy the Void Sword Pavilion. Under such circumstances, Elder Lan Xian still did not know what was good for her and slandered him. What was this if not courting death? Elder Lan Xian obviously understood this after the fire of jealousy passed. For a moment, her face turned pale and she did not dare to speak nonsense. Xinghui. I knew it. Your talent is unparalleled. In the crowd of the Void Sword Pavilion, Bai Shuang looked at Xinghui, who was emitting the endless pressure of the great Tao, and a faint pride flashed in her eyes. This is the #1 expert in our divine wilderness great world, the #1 genius of our divine wilderness great world. However, the consequence of pride was that she seemed to have thought of something, and a trace of sadness appeared in her eyes. But soon, this trace of sadness was put away by her, and she became energetic again. Not far from her, Luan Yu's face was pale at this time, and sweat appeared on his forehead. Looking at Xinghui, who was displaying endless power in the void, his eyes were full of fear. At this time, Xinghui had also manifested the power of the great Tao law in his body to the extreme. Then, with a grasp of his empty hand, the Scarlet Abyss sword suddenly appeared in his hand. The great Tao law contained in the Scarlet Abyss sword resonated with his own great Tao law, causing the pressure of the great Tao to increase again. Although the increase was not great, it made the people of the Void Sword Pavilion, who were already struggling to resist, turn pale and retreat one by one. Imprint of the great Tao. Xinghui looked at the void not far from the divine wilderness great world, and the great Tao law that had been activated to the extreme resonated with the Scarlet Abyss sword spirit. With a swing of his sword, Sword Chi suddenly rushed into the sky and whistled in all directions. The sword Qi instantly split the matter and storm in the void in front of him, forming a terrifying chasm that stretched for billions of kilometers. In front of this pitch-black chasm, the aura of Tsing Hui's great Tao of unification spread out continuously. Countless great Tao law began to fill in from all directions, as if trying to repair and make up for it. However, they were all swallowed up by the great Tao of unification's characteristics of simplifying complexity, and then transformed into his own energy until this chasm was completely fixed. Great divine ability. Great divine ability, this is definitely the power of a great divine ability. If a ruler uses all his strength to strike, he does indeed have the power to destroy a world. However, after he destroys the world, the remaining power will be continuously repaired by the great Tao law. Before long, the void will return to normal. Only a great divine ability can transform his body into the great Tao and leave behind traces of his own great Tao that can be said to be immortal and indelible. Lord Tsing Hui is really a great divine ability. Mingyu Swordmaster looked at the terrifying chasm that was so huge that it could cut the entire divine wilderness great world in half, and his face was filled with fear. This power was far from what any chaotic realm sovereign could withstand. If it was on the battlefield where the flames of war intertwined, this sword would have killed dozens or hundreds of chaotic realm sovereigns. It should be about time. Tsing Hui looked at the chasm that stretched for 1 billion kilometers in front of him. In fact, he himself was a little surprised that his sword could be so powerful. Through this sword, he also truly understood how terrifying it was when the chaotic lifeforms began to complete their transformation. It's enough, it's enough. Elder Floating Light wiped the non-existent sweat on his forehead. With this sword of yours, Lord Tsing Hui, I believe that any cultivator who comes to the divine wilderness great world will have to carefully consider the consequences of facing this sword. That's good. Tsing Hui nodded. Then, let's go back. As he spoke, his gaze also fell on Bai Shuaing in the crowd. Bai Shuaing also smiled and nodded at him. Immediately, the group returned to the Void Sword Pavilion. Not long after they arrived at the Void Sword Pavilion, Bai Shuaing, Master Jinzhao, Master Firmament, and the others came to visit at the same time. Although they had not gone to the endless void to witness Tsing Hui's sword that could be called a chasm, they had learned from Bai Shuaing that the crisis of the divine wilderness great world had been resolved. After seeing Tsing Hui, the two of them said sincerely, "Fortunately, our divine wilderness great world has you, Tsing Hui. Otherwise, no one knows to what extent the divine wilderness great world would have fallen in the future. Tsing Hui, on behalf of everyone in the divine wilderness great world, we would like to thank you for your contribution." After saying that, he lowered his head slightly and bowed to Tsing Hui sincerely. "Master, you're too polite. There's no need for that." Tsing Hui waved his hand and stopped the two of them. At the same time, he asked, "Has anything happened recently? Have you encountered any difficulties? If so, you can tell me. If I can help, I'll try my best to help." "It's nothing. Everything is going smoothly," Master Firmament said. Master Jinzhao also nodded. "The people of the Void Sword Pavilion know their limits and are quite polite to us." Speaking of this, he paused slightly and said with a smile, "And, from now on, I believe their attitude towards us will change again. It's good that you're fine. In addition, I hope that the cultivators of our divine wilderness great world cannot relax. Only when our divine wilderness great world is truly powerful can we establish a foundation for cooperation between the two sides. I'm waiting for the day when our divine wilderness great world's chaotic realm supreme is born," Tsing Hui said with a smile. Master Jinzhao glanced at Bai Shuaing. "Our divine wilderness great world's chaotic realm supreme is none other than Swordmaster Bai Heng." "That's not necessarily true. Didn't you break through to the traversal realm? With your foundation and the mysteries of the great origin, coupled with the endless supply of resources, it won't take long for you to break through from the traversal realm to the world with a thought. If you're fast, you'll be able to break through in 100 years or 1,000 years. Bai Shuaing said. 100 years, 1,000 years, Master Jinzhao couldn't help but smile bitterly and shake his head. The current divine wilderness great world is already the world of people like you. We can't do it. Master Firmament nodded in agreement. After a moment, he seemed to have thought of something. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but after a moment, he stopped. However, this detail was noticed by Tsing Hui. He immediately asked, Master, is there something wrong? There is indeed something strange. I don't know if I should mention it to you. Tell me, and I'll see if I can help you. Tsing Hui, do you still remember the blood-colored statue that you gave me a long time ago that can condense things that contain Tao rhythm? Tsing Hui's heart skipped a beat. Of course I remember. Recently, that statue has been giving me a strange feeling, as if, Master Firmament organized his words and finally said with some trepidation, as if, it has a life. Chapter 880. Under the guidance of Firmament Master, Tsing Hui soon came to the place where the statue was stored in the Hunyuan sword sect. It was an extremely secret underground palace protected by layers of tactical formations. Compared with before, the statue was obviously much larger. It had grown to a height of 10 meters. The whole statue was blood red and looked cruel and cold. In particular, its ruby-like eyes were full of spirituality, palpitations, and eeriness. Not to mention Firmament Master and Zhu Zhao Master, who were trembling. Even Tsing Hui felt a chill in his heart when he suddenly saw the statue. This statue. When did it become so huge? Tsing Hui said with a serious look. When he first saw the statue, the cold and eeriness had been entrenched in his heart. At that time, he only thought that it was because his cultivation was too weak, but, at this moment, he had grown to the point where he was close to a powerful divine, but when he saw the statue, the fear had not completely disappeared. What did it mean? The meaning behind the statue was at least that of a powerful divine sense, or even, it might be an evil god who was above the powerful divine sense. The only thing that puzzled Qing Su was that, logically speaking, evil gods should have been looking for ways to steal the treasures of ways, so why was this evil god able to provide them with treasures of ways when they sacrificed the cultivators? Thinking about it carefully, the Hunyuan sword sect had definitely obtained thousands upon thousands of treasures of ways from the blood-red statue over the years. As we continue to sacrifice cultivators with the blood of divine beasts, the statue gradually grew from 4 meters to more than 4 meters. However, during this period of time, with the help of the Void Sword Pavilion, we killed some cultivators from the Yujing Grand World, the Taihua Grand World, the Northernmost Grand World, and the Illusion Grand World. After sacrificing them, the growth rate of the statue suddenly increased exponentially. In just 10 years, it rose from less than 5 meters to its current height of 10 meters. Previously, Venerable Master Firmament and the others had used cultivators with the bloodlines of holy beasts and divine beasts as sacrifices to the blood-red statues. Due to the limitations of the cultivators' cultivation bases, the blood-red statues had only grown less than a meter in the past 100 years. However, now that the sacrifices had been changed from cultivators below the Saint realm to those who had cultivated the Saint true body and even the reigning realm, the efficiency had skyrocketed. Don't sacrifice this statue during this period of time. Let me study it properly. Alright. Master Firmament and Master Zhu Zhao quickly nodded. Not only was he not dissatisfied with Tsing Hui taking away such a precious treasure, but he also felt a sense of relief. Tsing Hui quickly brought the blood-red statue to his courtyard and carefully sensed it. However, even though the blood-red statue made him shudder, no matter how Tsing Hui probed it with his spiritual sense or some external objects, there was no reaction at all. In fact, he could directly absorb it into his small world without causing any damage to the small world's laws. What's the problem with this blood-red statue? Tsing Hui muttered to himself. After a while, he seemed to have thought of something. Suddenly, he ran his own coalescence great way. After looking at it for so long, the secret in this blood-red statue has never been revealed. It can be seen that the statue itself is definitely not among the ranks of the great divines. In all likelihood, it has something to do with the evil god. The evil god has always been an existence that the Master of Chaos, the Master of Gods, and the Master of Time have worked together to expel. Since this blood-red statue really represents the evil god and has been able to exist safely in the territory of the Master of Chaos for so long, this evil god must be very familiar with the means of the Master of Chaos. This is why the conventional means, even the conventional means used by the great divines, are useless. Therefore, this blood-red statue is really attached to some unknown creature or power. The characteristics of my coalescence great way, which simplifies the complex and unifies all methods, will be the only way to force it out. The coalescence great way was not any of the great ways in the territory of the Master of Chaos. It had never even appeared in the territories of the Master of Time and the Master of Gods. The evil god understood the means of the Master of Chaos, the Master of Time, and the Master of Gods, and was able to prevent such means in advance. However, it did not mean that it was completely immune to the newly born Great Way rules. Let me see your true face. Xing Hui stared at the blood-red statue and ran his Great Way. Streaks of sword light quickly dissipated from his body and began to surround and cut the blood-red statue. As he cut the statue, the power of the Great Way contained in the sword chi constantly dissipated and seeped into the body of the blood-red statue. It began to constantly wear down the statue. However, as his Great Way rules seeped into the blood-red statue, he clearly felt that his power of the Great Way rules was being dissolved and devoured by an invisible force. However, the effect of this dissolution was many times more difficult than the dissolution of Xing Hui's other attacks. As expected, you can't adapt to the new Great Way rules? I'd like to see if you'll still choose to endure and not show up when your body is completely destroyed. As Xing Hui spoke, he had already taken the blood-red statue and soared into the sky. He did not need to expend any effort. The space retreated and he had already directly entered the endless void and headed toward the depths of the endless void. In this regard, although the chaotic realm supremes of the Void Sword Pavilion were aware of this, none of them followed to avoid causing any misunderstandings. Xing Hui shuttled through the endless void for a long distance until the divine wilderness great world was only the size of a basketball in front of him. Then he stopped and took out the blood-red statue again. Suddenly, the power of the Great Way erupted. An invisible sphere of matter suddenly formed with him as the center. It crazily devoured and annihilated all matter and energy within a radius of hundreds of thousands of kilometers, including the spatial storm. All of these were simplified by the aftermath of the Great Way rules emanating from him. They were refined into one and became the source of power of the Great Way of unification. In the end, they were transformed into 49 streaks of sword chi. These 49 streaks of sword chi formed a sword formation with the Great Way of unification as the foundation. They began to surround and strangle the blood-red statue. In an instant, they had already broken the limit of the blood-red statue's ability to offset and transform. This caused cracks to rapidly appear on the blood-red statue, and the cracks continued to expand under the cutting of the sword chi. It seemed that the blood-red statue would be completely destroyed. Just as Xing Hui was about to completely tear the blood-red statue apart, a dark red mist suddenly emerged from the blood-red statue. The mist appeared, and it seemed to contain a terrifying power that could erode one's soul and corrode one's bones. Even his Great Way of unification could not resolve it for a moment. This caused his aura to soar again. The Great Way of unification began to devour and transform, then to repel, detaching itself and pulling itself away. "Stop, young fellow. We're not enemies." A cold voice that made people shudder came from the dark red mist. Then, the dark red mist that escaped formed a huge face that was dozens of meters wide. Standing in front of this huge face, even though Xing Hui already had his own Great Way and could easily shatter a great world with a diameter of hundreds of millions of kilometers, he still felt insignificant from the bottom of his heart. It was like an ant looking up at a huge elephant. The terrifying feeling of disparity made his hair stand on end. Evil God. Evil God. You're really an ignorant and lucky fellow. It seems that you have no desire to continue talking with me. I can feel your strength, but your strength is obviously not based on the statue in my hand. Instead, it's very far away. Perhaps this blood-red statue is just a strand of your divine will, and your true body is actually billions of light-years away from here? In other words, there's no need for me to be frightened by your bravado at all. Young fellow, I've said before that we're not enemies. On the contrary, we should have a common opponent, an opponent that you should be afraid of. Sing Hui's heart skipped a beat and he immediately said, the Lord of Chaos. The face formed by the dark red mist was silent for a moment before it spoke again. That's right, that powerful existence. The Lord of Chaos won't sit by and watch a second chaos life form grow in his territory. Once the Lord of Chaos notices you, he'll capture you and turn you into nourishment for the 6.5 chess pieces he's cultivating. 6.5 chess pieces. Sing Hui thought of the 12 legendary divine beasts, as well as the bloodline legacies of the Kunpeng, Chaos, Golden Crow, Ho, Torch Dragon, Qilin, and Yujia. The 6.5 chess pieces you're talking about are the 12 divine beasts? According to the bloodline of the Lord of Chaos, they are indeed the 12 divine beasts. The Lord of Chaos wants to use these divine beasts to borrow the broken great Tao laws of this world and his own unstinting cultivation to make them truly great chaos life forms. Unfortunately, his plan has been foiled by us. At present, only 6.5 of the 12 divine beast pillars remain, while the other 5.5 are in the hands of the Lord of Time and the Lord of Gods. The war between the evil god and the Lord of Chaos. Evil god? The face formed by the dark red mist looked mockingly at Sing Hui. Young fellow, if you can really grow up, you'll be one of us. I'm one of the evil gods. Sing Hui thought of some of the conversations he had with the 7-star sword spirit. All evil gods are chaos life forms. To be precise, only all chaos life forms that grow up can be called evil gods. Those that die halfway aren't in this category. The Lord of Chaos you speak of, as well as the Lord of Time and the Lord of Gods who now occupy this territory, belong to the pinnacle and the strongest chaos life forms. They're only one step away from completing the final metamorphosis, becoming the ultimate, becoming eternal. The face manifested by the bloody mist was clearly jealous when it mentioned the names of the Lord of Chaos, the Lord of Gods, and the Lord of Time. However, when it mentioned the words ultimate and eternal, it was full of longing. It's too difficult for chaos life forms that rely on chance to grow up. 9 out of 10 of them will die halfway. Lucky fellow, why don't we make a deal now? I'll be your guide on the path of chaos life forms, and you just need to do me a small favor. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.